planning board for this evening. Now, this normally would be our third Tuesday of the month meeting, but we've moved it up a week to give us a little bit of a breathing room around the holidays. So keep in mind that after this meeting, board members, you won't be coming back here for this board until after the new year. So sort of a beautiful thing, I think.
Do they want everybody in masks? Do they want everybody in masks? Because I can go in my car and get one.
Oh, no. All right, so we do have a quorum here. I know that we have one board member who's contacted us, said she will be a little bit late, so Robin will be joining us at some point. Starting off to my left, Dennis Quintal, our town engineer. Steve Hatfield, board alternate. And Steve, at least at the beginning here, you'll be voting. I don't know, have we heard anything from Chris?
I have.
Okay. Well, we'll see how the board fills out, Steve. And Peter Coffin, board member. Lynn Merrill, board member, vice chair. Richard Wilson, select board member to the board, to the planning board. Glenn Koppelman here, to my right, Alan Faulkner, our administrative assistant and board alternate. Peter Bakey, board member, and Glenn Greenwood, town planner. We're gonna put board business off until we finish the public hearings because we haven't we didn't set a specific start time separate for hearings as opposed to board business. So since we have the applicants here, we'll go ahead and do the applications right away. So first one up is Alexander Morris and Jeremy Homolka. Okay, good. If you come and take a seat at the table there. 10 King Pine Way, tax map R39-46. The applicant is seeking approval for a conditional use permit to build an accessory dwelling unit that will look like a barn. Okay, I've been asked to ask you if you have brought in $11.50, which apparently is something that you owe us.
No, because I gave it to Glenn about 2 weeks ago in the office.
That's what I meant, if you brought it in at some time.
I have brought it. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're all square with that.
Yep.
Okay, perfect.
That's fine.
All right. So, do we have materials for the board to look at? Are there multiple copies? Oh, there is. Yep. Well, let me get these out to the board, and then we'll ask you to walk us through what it is that we're looking at. Presuming there's multiple sets here. So there's one. We have 3.
Can we make some more?
Well, I have a set here.
You have a set
I
there.
got a set here. We should.
You guys have a set. Peter needs some.
Yeah, but that's I'll look at it a lot.
So, okay, so I think we're good. So the package includes, it looks like a sketch of the lot with I'm assuming there's an existing building and then there's a proposed building.
Yep.
We have, the next page is interior layout and dimensions. Oh.
All right.
All right. And page 3, we have some different elevation views of the proposed new structure, which in fact does look like a barn with a lean-to off to the side. And then there are renderings on the back page. Okay. All right. So, why don't we have you sort of verbally tell us what it is that we're looking at here and what you're looking to do, and then we'll get into discussion.
Sure. Yep.
And if you do me a favor and start by I introduced you, but if you would individually introduce yourselves, just for the record.
My name's Alex Morris. I'm Jeremy Logan. Alright.
Please.
What we're looking to do at some point in the hopefully near future is build an ADU beside our
Yes.
existing house on our lot for Jeremy's parents to live in. And I don't want to build just like another house. I want it to look like it's a cute little barn that would go right next to it and look like a garage. The existing house has a basement level 2 garage bays in it already, so that would be strange. So we thought we'd craft it to look like a barn with fake sliding doors on the front of it and everything. But
Is this the intended color that's on the rendering?
no, actually, I wish I could have gotten color. We want it to be red with white trim.
It shows red
It does, okay, good.
on this page, if you can see it.
Yes, yeah, yep.
Yeah.
Then that's the correct.
Is that also the color of the house, or?
No, the house is like a blue-gray.
Okay.
Jeremy says gray, I'm colorblind, so he says gray. It's gray.
Well, then we'll take his version.
Trust me when it comes to the look of this.
So that's really all that we have gone forward with. We're working with one contractor right now, but haven't really gone too far with them. There's some logistics with getting Jeremy's parents out here from Chicago that we got to work through, but we thought we would press forward with meeting the planning board and got paid for these designs to be, spun up with it so we could show the whole idea and at least make it through the planning board process. And then all the next steps will be down the road.
So before we go any further, I need to just make it clear that since at the moment, we're down 2 regular board members, Ellen as our second alternate will also be a voting member until, so I believe we have 7. Yes. Okay. I'm assuming that you don't have sort of a sketch or a rendering of what the whole site looks like with the house and the barn, so that we can see what the whole thing looks like together.
Not in 3 dimensions, but we do have the 2D plot here. The structure, I guess, if you were looking at it with the street closest to you, and the text, actually, if you turn it so the text is right side up. The upper structure is the existing house. We bought that in the beginning of 2020, and then the proposed ADU is just down.
The one that's angled?
Yep, the one that's angled about 45 degrees.
Yep.
So as you're coming up the driveway, left is already the existing house, right to the right will look like the barn.
Yep.
Right.
Just out of curiosity, the style or design type of the house is?
Colonial.
Okay.
How many bedrooms?
3.
The existing house is 3?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Any immediate questions from board members? Because I know that Glenn had made comments for us, and Dennis, did you also review this one?
I took a quick look at it. The only thing I would comment on is having a septic design.
Well, there's a 4-bedroom septic design on file. That's why it kind of puzzled me when you said 3.
But it's not.
It's 20-something years old, so it would have to have a new plan on site. But
Right. 3 plus this ADU.
Right.
So it'd be 5 bedrooms design.
So the ADU is, it shows, the person put a second bed in the loft area. It's not intended to be a bedroom. It's gonna be an office and sitting area.
So now you think it's going to be a 1-bedroom ADU?
That's the plan.
So even a 1-bedroom ADU counts as 1.5 times wastewater flow. So
That's good to know. Yeah.
you need another half a bedroom design.
Yeah. There's no closet there or anything.
So while you're doing it, if you wanted to do it extra 2-bedroom, have it designed a 2-bedroom so your system is capacity for the site, might be something you want to consider, that's all.
No, that's fine. I was just looking, I just wanted to make sure that, you know, if you had written comments, I was gonna ask you to go
That
through
was
them.
my own comment.
Yeah, okay.
We've not received a copy of the application, so I'm assuming that somebody's reviewed that and it meets specifications.
Well, I think we can maybe turn it over to Glenn for his comments, and he can address that.
So I have just, the applicant is seeking approval for a conditional use permit to build an accessory dwelling unit that will look like a barn. Planning board should consider a vote to invoke jurisdiction on the plan since this is the first meeting we're having with them. The applicants have submitted a plan showing both interior floor plans and exterior elevations for a proposed accessory dwelling unit. The detached structure will look like a barn. When using the effective floor area for the existing structure as detailed on the property tax card, the existing ADU cannot exceed 899 square feet. The proposal is for a unit with 880 square feet. The applicant needs to provide evidence that the existing septic system is capable of the additional demand created by this proposed ADU, or show that an expanded system has been designed for installation. So not really much different than what Dennis said, except they, using the tax map and the tax card information, which is what I always do, and I always use the effective square footage that shows on the tax card, because otherwise they have like 5,000 square feet on the tax card, and that would mean their ADU would be huge. But at the effective square footage for the unit, they fall under the standard.
So you're using effective, not GLA.
Correct.
Why?
Because that seemed appropriate?
I don't know, we as realtors always have to use the GLA. That's required because that's your actual square footage. The effective includes things like decks and patios and that sort of thing, anything that's taxed. Whereas the GLA is the amount of space that's under heat or air conditioning.
I use the effective.
I don't think we specified anywhere in our ordinances whether it's GLA or.
Well, I'm always used to thinking of as you described it, Lynn, because the other towns that I'm familiar with, that's what they do. It's basically the conditioned space that.
Well, I'm happy to go pull up the card. It'll take just a minute.
All it says is maximum size of the ADU should not exceed 1/3 the size of the primary single-family term. It doesn't specify overall size.
Welcome, Rob.
Exactly what she said.
Yep. It's exactly when you said you'd be here.
Getting pretty good at
No,
predicting driving today.
no detours tonight?
No, none.
Good.
Straight shot. Apparently that was earlier in the day.
Oh, yeah, Ellen was telling us about that. Yeah.
And New Boston Road.
Robin, we've just started into the first application. We didn't do any board business at the beginning. And there is I don't know if it's at Peter's place or if it's at Glenn's place, the packet that,
Is this the packet?
no, I don't think so. It would look like this.
There it is.
Here you go.
This is 10 King Pine. This is
Yes.
department comments or anything?
I don't think so. I don't believe there was anything. I think the only thing in here is application material from the applicant. Nope. No department comments.
No, I don't know if there's any letter from Richard, have you been in the selectman's office?
Yeah, it's open.
This door's open? Let me just check to make sure there's nothing down there.
And they were supposed to leave the alarm off, so hopefully they did.
If you indulge us for just a few minutes while we gather
Absolutely no rush.
gather our stuff and make sure we've got everything we need.
Is she going to pull the valve?
Yeah. What?
Is she pulling?
Yes, I believe. Well, I'm assuming so.
She should find it easy because I did it out today.
Okay.
There we go.
This is the last house on the left before the cul-de-sac.
Yep.
There's no street view, sorry. Just give you an idea of what it looked like.
I think it's the last house on the right before the cul-de-sac.
It's
On
the
the
left.
left.
It is the
It's
left.
left, yeah.
10?
Tends to be even numbers should be on the left, yeah. Going out of town.
There's some G10.
Oh, okay. Just looking at the department comments.
The town,
I'm on the,
town Wi-Fi.
Public
Some
access.
mails.
Yeah.
This is our G10.
Chris will not make it tonight.
Will not?
Well, it's taking a day to law enforcement.
What else was going on?
Just accidents everywhere.
Oh, really?
Coretta, Timberland.
It was a beautiful day.
Coretta, Timberland High School. Some kid was gonna go shoot the source officer.
Heard about that.
And then you had the rollover.
Yeah. There you go. It's in my car.
Just put it in.
What is that? Just like see this car rolling
That's
and
right.
going to a
Small
stop.
tank,
and
large
see the
tank.
car everywhere. That was at Kingston Church.
You're right.
Oh, right here.
Across from
Church Street Station.
Yep.
Let's try again.
Oh, right near the fire pump.
Yeah, the car was very close to going into the.
Oh. That's probably pretty full of water.
It was.
With all the rain.
He couldn't get out of the car.
Was it upside down or had it
It
gone?
had gone upside down, so it was right in the
Oh, okay.
but everything was cracked and
Yeah, yeah.
everything. He was an older gentleman. He's like, I can't get out. They were like, stop moving.
Oh, okay, so Glenn,
The GLA for the site is 2380, meaning the accessory dwelling unit couldn't exceed 793 square feet.
so in its current configure, if we were to use that standard, that measure, if you will, it's
The
about,
present
it's about 100
Is
about 100 square feet.
too big.
over.
Nine.
But then, do the numbers, the 880 numbers include the garage? If that's not included in the GLA of the main house, it shouldn't be included in the GLA of the ADU. So I mean, you gotta compare apples to apples, so is that garage included in the 880? No, it's not, okay, so, yeah, that would be more correct number to use.
That's weird, just because when I bought the house, I bought a house that was 27 feet of livable finished space. That's what we were told.
And this house, you said it's you scheduled as a one bedroom, but you got two front on the floor plans.
They put one in there to show you could.
Oh, could.
There's no intention for that to be a bedroom, for the upper loft.
It's an open, exposed lot.
Right, no, I think it's been said, if you're gonna have to have a second system design, septic system design, you just go with
Sure.
whatever, you know, so that gives you the expansion option.
Glenn, do you happen to know if the RSA, the state RSA defining ADUs, gives any guidance on which standard to use?
I do not believe that they do. I'm happy to
They don't go into that detail
look
yet?
up that citation.
And I didn't bring my book with me. Is there one of them?
The logbook?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can get it. Well, there's nothing to do right now.
Let me know.
What year did you buy
I
that?
can get it.
2020.
I'm seeing that shows us 2,860 square feet, 3 bedrooms, 2,500.
2800.
Yeah, see 2,860.
Yeah, but sometimes the realtors don't put the right number in because they don't spend the time to go to the tax
How
card.
do they get that
and look.
number?
You're supposed to go to the tax card and put the number in. Instead, they go to the automatic, which pulls the effective instead of the GLA, and they're supposed to correct it.
I mean, I lived in 1,500 square foot for 5 years, so this isn't,
Because it's clear on the tax card. I always use the effective whenever I've done the calculation. So I guess I'm admitting I'm consistently wrong. But I'm consistent with that. I always use the effective gross floor area. That's,
Glenn,
yes, ma'am.
picture of the house.
Oh,
It's lovely.
it's a beautiful house.
Beautiful house.
Very nice.
And, you want to see how?
And then I would get it.
That's
a lot of time stopping. But I do drive up to see it.
Does that help?
Yeah, no, I can make
This definitely gives
Because
you
it could be used in the
a
calculation.
really good feel for it and what's around
What they
it.
called it, I think.
It's not too
utility
close to
room.
this house.
But I mean, does that have anything to do for what, if that couldn't be used, and that was the standard we had with the last time, isn't that the standard we're using?
But
Well, what we're gonna
think
use
they
for square
proposed
footage
it
is
that
something we should clear
Both
out.
things are
Yeah, but they couldn't change it,
Effective
if that changed,
square
and we
footage.
had to have the plan in front, but it
Gross
could
is
not
already
be changed, because if it was ever changed to be heated,
Big
it
difference.
would have put the square footage
But
over
our
what it
ordinance-
could have been.
Doesn't specify.
did the plan reflect a note like that?
Yes,
It did?
yeah.
Glenn, our ordinance says the size of the ADU shall not be smaller than 600 square feet. The maximum size of the ADU shall not exceed 1/3 of the size of the primary single-family dwelling.
But it doesn't define size.
It
And
doesn't.
that's something we have time to do to clarify this for the future before our next, for the warrant. Which is
Because
something
the
we should do.
size would actually be the 5,000 square foot size that they give for the house as this.
Including
first
attics and
measurement.
basements and crawl spaces and everything.
That's the first measurement that is given on the tax card. I've never used that because that seemed like that couldn't possibly be the right number to use, but I have always used the effective.
Yeah. Appraisers and real estate people are all supposed to use GLA. Appraisers in particular always use GLA.
But that takes away from, because they consider, see, we say living space.
Mm-hmm. Living space is what's considered,
1/3, no, we just say 1/3 of the size of the primary single-family dwelling.
right, and gross living space is the norm that they use all over the country for determining size of the house. Effective includes your patios, your garages, your basements, your unfinished basements, unfinished attics, all of that. Because that, you're taxed on all of that. So effective is what you're taxed on, GLA is what's living space, and gross area is the gross area of the property.
And if you've done it the other way every time, why don't we continue with that tonight? And then
Yes.
clarify this in the future?
Yes.
That's the numbers we've been getting from
Yeah.
Robert Stewart with the tax card numbers, and then we've done this in the ZBA
Yeah.
before it got switched over, so I think for consistency's sake, we need to continue using.
I have always
Until
used,
we change.
I've always used the effective, so if that is not what we want to use,
We'll use
Well,
that tonight
we
and
need to use that
clarify.
tonight.
Tonight, yeah,
Correct.
yeah, because it's, we can't change the rules in the middle.
And if we wish to change the rules, then we'll do that for the next, in time for town meeting. But certainly, it's not fair for them to think that
Right.
if that's what's been done in the past, that it's going to continue, it should continue for them.
And presumably somebody who drew up these plans was using
Yes,
those numbers.
they wouldn't have picked
Yeah.
that number
Pick that number.
for no reason.
Quick look at it and see.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see anything
I
in
know
the
that-
law
I know
that
it
talks
does.
to, anyways.
Yeah, I was just thinking
So,
Because they're not really crazy with us using a formula, they prefer if we just flat off say how big the accessory dwelling unit can be and leave it at that.
right, okay. Well, we'll be consistent for tonight with what we've done in the past, and we can have a discussion as a board at another time if we wish to
Tonight.
make any, tonight, yes, we need to do that.
Mm-hmm.
We have to do
It,
that.
it has to be
Yes,
tonight.
yes.
Yeah, because we have to post it.
All right, so later, we'll do that.
And by the way, just so you know, the hearing notice went in and does not include the new one. So anyway, go ahead.
Okay. So, Glenn, you were in the process, and maybe you finished.
I have finished.
You finished reading, okay. So, with regard to, I think there was a question, did the application satisfy did it check all the boxes?
All except for the septic system.
Okay. So, you mean as far as it not being verified, or that there,
Correct.
okay.
No evidence was provided to
So is that,
support that the existing septic system could handle the increased demand of the ADU.
okay. So I guess that begs the question whether or not
I
it's,
mean, I think from Richard's perspective, he thought that if it was a 4-bedroom system and they were proposing.
Except an ADU's bedroom, the house and existing bedroom's 3 bedrooms, so it has to have a new plan.
so.
They don't have to put it in, they just have to have a plan on file.
So is that enough to keep it from being a complete application and us taking jurisdiction of it, or
I don't think so. I think you can certainly.
Condition.
conditioned upon?
Because what we're doing, what we're doing,
Condition of
we
a
vote
plan.
for jurisdiction.
We've done that with a couple others, this
Oh,
is
yeah.
conditional on getting a septic plan in.
Absolutely.
Just asking the question.
Yeah, voting
Well,
jurisdiction is
I mean,
so that you.
from the
feel that
applicant's
information
point,
is
why have
considered.
a plan done if it's gonna get turned down for some other reason? Why spend the money if there's another issue? So,
Just asking.
okay, I'm just answering.
Thank you. So is someone on the board comfortable making a motion to invoke jurisdiction?
I make a motion, we invoke jurisdiction.
I'll second that.
Motion by Lynn, second by Peter Coffin. Discussion? And so that the applicant knows, this step in the process is that, should this vote pass, that it would mean that the board has considered the application complete enough to be considered further and moved on in the process. And it also starts a time clock for us to make a decision, which is part of state law. And that's a 65-day time clock. It can be a lot shorter, but that's our limit. Okay. Any discussion from the board? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? So that's unanimous. And Robin came in, so Ellen stepped back. Ellen's not voting, and but Steve is still, so that gives us our seven voting members. Okay. All right.
Doesn't look like there's any public comment. Doesn't look like there's any public comment.
Did Jim or Charlie have any public comment on this application? Looks like a no.
I make a motion, we accept the application as presented on the condition that they provide the town with a septic design to support the 4 bedrooms, the additional bedroom ADU.
Okay. Can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think the motion would be to grant a conditional use permit for an accessory dwelling unit. Would be the actual.
With the condition that the septic design be completed and turned into a town.
So motion by Lynn, second by Richard.
What are you granting, a special?
It's a conditional,
Thank you.
isn't that the process, Glenn?
Yes.
Conditional use
What the
permit?
planning board is
Under 206.6.
granting is a conditional use permit.
Attached structure.
So the motion was Lynn and Richard.
Could I just ask one question before you finalize that?
Yeah.
I went on the presumption that your house has a two-car garage, and with the ADU, there's a third garage space. My presumption, and I hope the board understands this is my presumption, you're required to show you have an area for 4 cars. They have ample space to park one additional car ungaraged on the site,
Right.
as their plan details. I just wanted that to be on the record.
Okay.
Which brought up another thing, it looks like on the backside, on the bottom, on the sort of basement level, the lower level, is that another garage door?
It would be a workshop, and then
Workshop.
I want to put a tractor in there.
Okay, so
It's a
that's
shed.
that's another garage, yeah.
There's another parking spot.
It's a parking
It's,
spot.
well, it's not a parking spot, but it's also, yeah.
Yeah. There's your other parking spot.
You name it, you need a vote.
Any further discussion? Ellen?
Well, and there's nothing on any wetlands or anything? I think we should say that.
There's no evidence, one way or the other.
That'll show up on the septic plan.
Yeah, that would be on the septic plan.
Further discussion? So the motion is to grant the conditional use permit for the accessory dwelling unit as presented with the condition that a septic design be provided and on file with the town. Is that right, Richard?
Perfect.
All right, assume you're ready for the vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? And that's unanimous. All right, thank you, gentlemen. With this approval, you can then move forward to the building inspector, selectman's office to file for building permits and that sort of thing. But only once the condition has been met for providing the septic.
Just one question, the site plan, filing that with the town's work through Glenn or Ellen,
Richard?
Oh, the septic plan?
for a person that doesn't have any, got it.
You mean the septic?
The health
The septic
officer.
design?
Help us, okay.
Health officer, and Richard is our health officer,
Okay.
in addition to being select board member and our rep to this board from the select. Lots of hats.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Must be nice if I had a card with me, maybe give it.
You don't carry them on you at all times?
In my truck.
Why don't you come on up and get yourself settled and comfortable, Charlie?
Thank you.
All right, so while Charlie is getting ready, I'll read the next hearing, which we're starting at 7:05, roughly. So this is for TTAD LLC, Granite Fields Commercial Condominiums on Diamond Oaks Boulevard. It's tax map R3, Lot 4, Land Unit 1. The applicant is seeking approval to allow for construction of two-story, 40 by 100-foot metal on slab commercial buildings. And this is a continuation, right? Yes.
It is. Long continued. August. Originally, we saw them on August 3rd.
And then we had a site walk.
We did a site walk. They were continued to October and then November and now December.
Probably okay. Does anyone want a full-size set of plans? Because we do have some. No? Okay.
Have a magnifying glass.
Give them a
Look all around the plan for a little plus sign.
There's another. Anybody down there
That's better.
want full-size? No?
Actually, I don't think, we were sticking around.
We have one. I read it, but I didn't.
There was no more skill there.
It's just in the correspondence.
I couldn't show it. Eight and eight.
I don't think so. I'm not gonna check it up on the list. It's good to clean that sentence. Clean it up a bit. Let's see which one.
Charlie, if you just hang on 1 minute, we're going to look for one piece of paper one comment sheet that came in.
Okay,
We want to make sure we have it and that we read it.
This is interesting. He's waiting to hear back from the diocese.
Whether they'll line.
And it's a great use of it.
Running us around. Everybody came over here, thing I wanted.
Thank you.
I said he noticed it, but told everybody I was wrong. Convinced her by asking him to weigh in there.
Yeah, for
All kinds of-
Yep.
Okay, yep.
Okay, Charlie, would you introduce yourself?
Sure.
Charlie Zilch, SCC and Associates, here on behalf of TCAT LLC, owned by Jim Dufresne, who's with us in the back corner tonight. I think he's the only member of the audience with us tonight. So this is the amended site plan for Land Unit 1 within the Greenfield development. We introduced this plan back in August, and we did a number of actions. It'll take us a little while to get back, and I'll go into that in a minute. But whereas it's been quite a while, I'll just kind of briefly run through what the proposal is. And it's pretty simple. The intent of the application is to seek approval for, or to allow for the construction of two-story metal on slab commercial buildings. One of the buildings will be 40 by 100 or 4,000 square feet. The other 36 by 100, 3,600 square feet. Each one of the buildings will contain two-story commercial condominium units, so they have 4 condominium units spread amongst the 2 buildings. So both the buildings, as you see from the plan set, they're going to be accessible both to the upper floor, which would be abutting the large parking lot, and then the lower floor you'll have access down there, and that'll be access from an accessway that comes in off the condominiums. As I mentioned, the parking in the upper level, that's a shared parking lot. It's shared with Land Unit 3, which is the golf course, who they stagger their parking times with the winter-used sports complex, which is on Land Unit 5. So Land Units 3 and 5, the sports complex and the golf course, stagger their parking from different times of the year. Obviously, the golf course takes it in summer, and then the parking is taken over by the sports complex during the winter time. So they'll be sharing that same parking lot. And then, as I just mentioned, there'll be another access to the lower units, or the back side of the units, and that'll come in off of Diamond Oaks Boulevard, as I should say. And that basically provides for a couple of parking areas down below, but it's mostly just for access and fire lane. It's 24-foot paved way on the back side of the buildings. And as I mentioned, there'll be access in both the front and the back, or the upper and the lower. So, as far as the buildings, that will be supported by a common septic system, which is designed just to the north of Building B. Building A is the one closest to Diamond Oaks. Building B is the further north one. The septic system is beyond that. They'll have a shared well, which is located down by the lower access way. And again, the parking is going to be shared with the other parking areas. So this is basically a continuation from August. As you may recall, we introduced the plan back in August. I had a fairly lengthy discussion with the board about the application. There was considerable conversation about the wetlands and the wetland buffer. As you can see to the west of this, on that land unit, is a considerably large wetland complex. We had sent our soil science out there, Tim Ford, to establish the setbacks from that wetland complex. There was a little map error on his original report. He had stated that it was supposed to be 55 feet from the poorly drained soil, 90 feet from the very poorly, it should have been 60 and 90. So with that, we had to make some adjustments to the layout, tighten things up a little bit. Also, the board had asked that we meet with conservation, and we were going to do a site walk. We did all those things, and at the end of the conversation that night, the one thing the board asked that they wanted to get your consultant, Mike Cuomo from Rockingham Conservation District, to take a look at the wetlands buffer report that had already been generated, and then an additional report that was asked or requested, and that was for the Woodland buffer report, which is basically a reporting of the existing conditions and the natural state of what's in between the wetlands and the limit of the setback or the buffer. So Tim Ford prepared that. Once that was done, that was submitted for Mike Cuomo for review. He reviewed it in office, and then he also met with Tim Ford on site, walked the property, took a look at it, make sure there was no sensitive rare species. Tim's report didn't find anything of the like. Mike and Tim walked it. Mike agreed with the wetland setbacks, the 60-foot assessment and the 90-foot assessment. So once that was done, that didn't happen until I think it was late October when that finally Mike had a chance to be out. He was pretty busy.
Yeah, the letter from Mike Cuomo came in. It was dated October 18th.
Right, October 18th. So once we had that letter from Mike and some assurance that nothing was going to change with the setbacks and the buffer, we went ahead and made all of our revisions, and that's the delay in getting back here. Like like I said, we've been pretty active in the meantime though with the sidewalk and with the meeting with the Conservation Commission as well. But the most noticeable change, I mentioned when I was introducing this back again, is one of the buildings has been shortened, and that's to accommodate that adjustment in that buffer from 55 to 60 feet. So that's building B. In order to accommodate that setback, we basically dropped that from a 40-foot width down to 36 feet, and then we adjusted the pavement inward or away from that buffer so that we're not introducing any impervious area within that 90 and 60-foot setback.
So
All impervious is outside of the buffer.
So one building will be 36 by 100, and the other will be 40 by
Building B
100.
will be 36 by 100,
Okay.
and building A will be 40 by 100. And so we made the adjustment to that. So we had also a handful of review letters from Dennis, from Glenn, comments from a sidewalk, from the planning board meeting, as well as the conservation hearing. So I addressed all that, resubmitted it, and we're back here today with those revised plans. If you look at the plan set, really no major design changes. It's still the same configuration, still the same concept here. A lot of minor changes. Like I said, the most noticeable one is probably the adjustment to the building and the pavement. One of the other bigger changes to the plan set is both this board, conservation, as well as Mr. Cuomo, wanted to see less impact within the woodland buffer area. And so our original plan was basically that lower parking area was supported by grading. We had 3-to-1 slopes, 4-to-1 slopes coming off of that. We also designed an infiltration pond, which would put you up a little bit higher, a little bit bigger of a pond, where we can collect the drainage and direct that into. So in consideration of those comments and those thoughts, what we wound up doing is we designed the whole lower access way is instead of being supported by instead of being supported by a grading layout, what we did is we used a retaining wall now. So that whole, I would say the majority of that lower parking area is going to be retaining wall. Some of it's going to be supporting a fill, and some of it will be holding back a cut on that. It's kind of a balance of the two as you go along that back access way. So that eliminated a considerable amount of impact within the woodland buffer, and we're able to leave that natural buffer closer to the access way, as opposed to have to cut that and then grade into that buffer. So that made that in itself was a pretty substantial improvement. And then the other change is where we had some consideration to allow us to have the infiltration pond within the buffer, make a change, a substantial change, trying to get that completely out of it would have been a really difficult task for us. So in consideration of that, what we wound up doing is we designed a wet pond now, which is something that you can design in a more compact space. It's a deeper pond designed to hold water, and then you have storage above that to compensate for the stormwater flows that we've been picking up here with the additional paved surfaces. So that tightened that grading up quite a bit as well. Not nearly as much as.
I'm sorry, we designed the wet pond instead of the infiltration pond, is
Yes.
that correct?
Yep, and that allowed for a smaller pond area. It's deeper than what the infiltration pond would have been, but more compact, so that certainly helped.
And you indicated it'll probably have water in it most of the time?
Yes, yeah, that's the design. It is designed to be within the water table, but there's enough freeboard, I guess, Dennis, would that be the correct way of saying it, above the ponded water elevation to the outlet pipe, so that when you do have a stormwater flow put into that wet pond, you'll have some storage there. Some of it will infiltrate through the sides, some will evaporate, and then a lot of it back out to an overflow if necessary.
The overflow or the outlet goes, I'm assuming, to the wetland area?
It does, yeah. But at that point, you're looking at pretty much treated water. So again, this is, right now you have a parking lot where there's no drainage designed to capture any of that water that comes off the parking lot. It's supposed to be sheet flow. But what basically happens here, from what Tim Ford, our wetland scientist, has seen on site, he was out there shortly after pretty substantial rain. And he says it really what it comes down to is that sheet flow hits the edge of the pavement and then it becomes about 3 or 4 basically channelized flows that come off of that. So it doesn't really effectively do the sheet flow like it should. and that's creating some erosion. So with this design, we're going to pick up all that stormwater flow coming off the parking lot, get it into a closed drainage system, and then into this wet pond. So we'll have a little bit better control and be able to reduce some of that erosion. So in all, like I said, there's a lot of small adjustments to the plans. Give you some revised legal documents, kind of limiting outside storage, making sure there's restrictions on any potential pollutants like gas, chemicals, hazardous materials. There's restrictions on all that. Attorney Charlie Cleary put that together and we submitted that. I'm sure Glenn's had a chance to take a look at it. Also, just kind of increase the turning radius in some of the turnout space on that lower parking area so we can get emergency vehicles in there. We've added additional areas for snow storage, some signage, and things like that. So I know Dennis has a letter. I've had a chance to look through it. Just took a look at Glenn's. So we never did take jurisdiction at that first meeting, so that's something that we might want to consider. There is just a couple of waivers. No variance is required for the proposal.
Okay, thank you, Charlie.
Thank you.
All right, we do have comment letters from town departments. We also have input from conservation. I probably at some point will should read and will read the letter from Mike Como from Rccd. But let's start with Glenn and Dennis. Glenn, how about we start with your comments?
Okay. I have that this is the second public hearing for this proposal to construct 2 new buildings in Granite Fields. The board has not yet invoked jurisdiction on the plan and should do this evening. Following my comments upon reviewing the plan, and the comments addressed by the new plan have been stricken through in these comments. So as you'll see, still need to we need to have the discussion about conditional use permit because the property is in the Aquifer Protection District. Charlie has submitted a response statement to the conditions of the conditional use permit for the Aquifer Protection Zone. That's something the board needs to go through. Number 2, they've addressed. Number 3, they've addressed. Number 4, the parking areas. I have looked at the proposed deeds that he has to allow the sharing of the parking areas. It is still an issue that I think that the board needs to discuss, and that's why I didn't remove it from my list. Number 5 is that the plan presented required a conditional use permit with the wetland buffer area, and so that is also has been addressed through a statement that Charlie has submitted to the planning board. So you want to take a look at that. We go down to the rudimentary landscaping plan has been provided for these proposed condominiums as my comment number 9. The sidewalk was helpful, but the board may want to discuss if the plantings that are proposed on the landscaping plan are adequate. The planning board should make a determination about what constitutes substantial improvement for this project. That's something the planning board does late in the process, so I just put it there as a reminder. And how is fire protection being provided to these new buildings is my final comment.
So, just to be clear, Glenn, are we needing to do 2 conditional use permits on this?
Yes.
One for aquifer, as
One for the
a
wetland.
use in the aquifer, and then one for the infiltration basin in the buffer area of the wetland.
Correct.
Okay.
And Charlie has submitted a statement in support of both of those for the board to consider.
Okay. Before we go to Dennis, Charlie, do you want to tell us how to answer Glenn's last question there, the fire protection, what the intent is there?
Well, we're not proposing the buildings to be sprinklered. I'm hoping that the fire department had a chance to look at this revised application and perhaps they comment on it if they have any concerns.
No.
Okay, well, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't the building for Mark Hines about the same size and that wasn't required to be sprinkled at all?
Yeah, I honestly don't remember, and I'm not sure that that was what was being suggested. I think it was just a question from Glenn as to what the intent for fire protection is. You know, I mean, sprinkle is an option. You know, fire pond is another. There are different ways to do it.
Finding the closest hydrant to that property, how far that is from there, dry hydrant. It's probably one right down there somewhere.
It was,
That's probably up to the fire department though.
It's one across 125.
Yeah, that fire department would be the inquiry in that, I think.
Okay. Well, they haven't commented at this point, so. All right. Dennis. You do have comments on this one.
I do. So, I did get a number of documents, the revised plan and a number of other documents. I included a list there. And so I deleted my previous comments that I think were satisfactorily addressed and offer the remaining ones that I think are important to review. Number one was to show the dimensions of the wetland buffer zone. The line is shown there, but there was no dimension for that on the plan. So it would be handy to see that dimension shown from the buffer zone to that line, from the wetland to that line. My previous comment, number 6, was about performance bonds must be established according to Article 907, and states that the amount of performance guarantee shall be set prior to final or conditional approval of the plan. And I recommend that a detailed proposed bond amount be submitted so that it can be reviewed prior to any form of approval. That has not been received. Previous comment, number 12, about the drainage design. I have no objection to the methodology for the stormwater analysis. However, the response and plans show that the stormwater pond is now a detention wet pond, wet basin, not infiltration, since excavation will be below the water table. The revised calculations show that the lowest outlet on the structure be at elevation 117, and assuming the pond, that would be assuming the pond level, that would be the pond elevation. Revised calculations show that the pond volume starting at elevation 12, if I'm not mistaken, this volume between 112 and 117, nearly 6,000 cubic feet, cannot be counted as storage and will affect the outflow and peak elevation during each storm event. If I am correct, please revise the calculations and edit the outlet structure detail accordingly. Also, if the roof design has changed, then the sub-catchment areas must be revised. This will affect the runoff of each of the catch basins. Number 14, I recommend the bottom area of each of the 4 bay and infiltration basins be noted on the plan. Just makes it easier for the contractor who's building it to be able to figure out the square footage, even if it isn't the exact configuration. The response states they are shown on sheets 3 and 6. However, I couldn't pick up on that, so they must be, maybe it's on a different layer chart. Number 17, the riprap calculations have been provided. The length and width must be shown on the plans. Show the riprap at the culvert pipe outlet entering the 4-bay area, which there isn't any riprap there. And again, perhaps that's on a different layer, but you just need to make sure that it's on the plan so that the calculations are shown, and on the detail sheet, it does show a detail of the riprap, but it just doesn't show the length and width of what needs to be there, even though the calculations were provided, it just won't show on the plan. The 20, there will be a significant amount of roof runoff from both ends, from the end of both buildings into the steep slope area between the buildings. The response states that the roof will now drain front to back, although this is not shown on sheet 8. If the roof runoff is front to back, I recommend that the shed roofs be installed over walk-in doorways to prevent the possibility of ice from the drip edge falling on those entering and exiting the building. So parking spaces are shown in between the two buildings, so if the roof runoff that's shown, the roof design that's shown on the plans is in that direction, and then snow and ice coming off the roof will land right on the cars. So I would think that, I don't know which direction the roofs are going. I'm saying it's roof on the back, but is it side to side or front to back?
No, we're gonna consider a change, Dennis, for front to back, and then, architect, decided that we're gonna keep it as is, as it was on the original plan. So you're right, so that runoff will be coming off the side, so I do need to address it. One of the things that I might be able to do is just simply add, gutters on either side of that, and tie that runoff down to the stormwater system.
Well, snow and ice will go down on people's cars, even if there are gutters there, so I have a concern about the cars.
All right, I'll have to take a look at that then.
That's my opinion.
Okay.
And the only reason I talk about the ice from drip edge is because I experienced that at my office. I had a shed roof over the doors, and the roof, the ice is icicles this way. They come down off the roof. And if that little shed roof over the windows wasn't there, it really would come down and it hurt somebody. If you're right there at the right time, it can do a job, I'm sure. That's why I think it's important on all of these type of buildings to put some sort of protective zone on the roof. But if you are gonna keep it side to side, then that's probably not an issue. So you probably wouldn't have to revise your calculations on that.
And I did have a chance to talk with Steve Cummings once we got your comments. He had a chance to review, and he does agree with you on your note 12 about the drainage calculation. The volume is there. He just needs to revise his drainage report to show that better, as you suggested.
Yeah, it just might affect the size of the pond or the elevation, the height.
Right.
It's going to be changing that.
Yeah, so I think maybe if anything, we could add a little bit more height to it and capture that. So it seemed like a fairly easy change for him, as he was suggesting.
I just have one more comment too.
Sure.
I know that the Conservation Commission wants no disturbance in the buffer zone, which means that pretty much all of that detention basin would have to be outside of the buffer zone. And the question is, can you still do this project without the impact to the buffer zone? And the only way I can look at this and see that it could still be a viable project by putting buildings there that are shown is to do away with the lower parking area completely and have that be a long trench type of stormwater detention area. And that could be done in that lower level. But if that's the case, then we couldn't use the lower level for garage doors or paved area. But that would, to me, would be the only way you'd be able to put the buildings there that are shown and not impact that buffer zone with that detention basin that's shown. So I know it's recommended by, well, I'm not going to say anymore because that's...
Well, I'll be reading the letter from Conservation and the folks can hear it.
Okay, but I just wanted to let you know that what the alternative could be.
Sure. Okay, thank you, Dennis.
My opinion, that's all.
Well, that's what you're here for.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Why don't I go through the letters that we've got? Oh, unless, we probably ought to, before I forget, we probably ought to take Glenn's recommendation and invoke jurisdiction on this. If someone's willing to.
Make a motion to invoke jurisdiction.
Second that.
Motion by Lynn, second by Peter Coffin. Discussion.
I assume that your recommendation to do that is based on the advice that is sufficiently complete to
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Okay, we're voting on jurisdiction, guys. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? It's unanimous. Thank you. Okay. Why don't why don't I start with the conservation letter, since that'll follow on right with what you were talking about, Dennis. And then after that, I'll do the one from Rockingham County Conservation. So Kingston Conservation Commission wrote this to us on December 14th. That's today. Okay. It says, while the latest set of plans reviewed at our December 9 meeting do reduce the impact to the wetland buffer, any incursion into the buffer zone, whether permanent or temporary due to construction, is not acceptable to the Conservation Commission, particularly where an already compromised river and a steep slope are factors. The Conservation Commission still supports the statement made by Michael Cuomo excuse me, of Rccd in his October 18th letter, quoting, wetland buffer clearing and earth moving activities. Oh, excuse me. I'm gonna have to cough, so I'm gonna walk away. Continue reading that.
Sure. The Conservation Commission still supports the statement made by Michael Como of Rccd in his October 18th letter that, quote, wetland buffer clearing and earth moving ... activities significantly diminish the wetland buffer and reduce its effectiveness. I encourage the planning board to consider if these features can still be moved out of the wetland buffer, end quote. In our meeting, Chief Briggs pointed out that it would be possible to avoid impacting the wetland buffer altogether if the building site was moved uphill or sideways, taking up some of the space that is now a large parking lot. The Conservation Commission would like to know if the developer had considered this and whether it is necessary to keep the entire existing parking lot for the current purpose. Should the planning board decide to issue a conditional use permit for this project, the Conservation Commission would expect that the comments made by Town Engineer Dennis Quintel in his December 10th letter be addressed prior to approval. The Conservation Commission feels that it is essential that a detailed performance bond be required for this project, as the town is still addressing ongoing problems caused by poor design and maintenance of past projects by this developer. Respectfully, Kingston Conservation Commission.
Does anyone know what they mean by already compromised river?
Little River, I think that's referring to, across the road at the, it comes in from the concrete and asphalt plant. Had a violation a number of years ago, and I think there's been runoff in there from another activity in that area, so I think that's what it means. It flows, starts on Brown, and goes, sort of back down and goes down through Plastow. But it starts out coming past the entire
So this property is upstream,
downstream of the.
downstream from Plastow, upstream.
Downstream, it's upstream of Plastow, downstream of the, where it comes across the north side of 1.5, I believe. You're correct. It may be that she's thinking it's, it goes down from there, and there's, the river itself is coming up and goes on.
I don't think there's a portion of it was a compromised portion. I thought the compromised portion was with the pollution.
Maybe you should just ask Conservation Commission to clarify their comment. What, you
And
know,
she's saying the river is compromised, as opposed to that portion.
Okay, was there any more discussion from the board on this one?
Can I see that real quick? I just want to read the last little bit again.
So the existing parking lot there that currently is there besides the building, it really doesn't have offer any treatment to the water that runs off that watershed to that river. So this design that he's, not only, I understand they put in a couple buildings and I get it, but it seems like to me they're actually, that benefits this water problem by putting it through this system. Because now there's nothing. So they're making something better than what's existing by this plan.
Except it comes over the area that is where the people overflow comes off of that parking area. It's going into what is now.
That's where it goes now, it just runs off.
Yeah, it so it goes in where the buildings are and a lower parking area and all that, another front parking area, which is gonna be.
But none of that parking lot area gets treated, correct?
Not now.
Not now.
Not now.
Not
It's-
now.
Well, it
So this
flows
would be a
into-
benefit to
It
that.
flows into a flatter area where it flows into the ground.
But it doesn't get treated.
It's not going to treat it
Correct.
except by the natural ground.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is going away, and then you're adding flow,
But you're treating it.
but you're then putting it into a pond, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I got a question. You then said that you referred to that pond, can't be counted there between stations 112 and 117, can't be counted as storage?
Can't be counted as storage because it's already full of water. So calculations that are provided show they list 112 as an area in the program. By listing the area, and the next area, and the next area, the program actually calculates the volume when the rain starts, the rainwater comes in. So your program is seeing that input data, is saying, okay, it's empty. So we got storage, 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 and storage, and so on. But if it's full of water, you can't count that storage. So realistically, you have to start out at 117 because that's where the water first enters that outlet structure. The outlet structure is at 117, and then it goes down into the culvert itself. So you have to start your volume calculation, assuming that it's full at 117, even though probably there could be, like Kelly said, some leaching or some infiltration through the berm, and maybe it will be dry. But there'll be storms that will happen that water level is going to be at that lowest outlet height. And you can't count that in stormwater, otherwise it's going to fill up and go over the berm and out the spillway.
So the advantage of the wet pond is obviously with the infiltration pond, you're leaving an area above seasonal high water table that the water infiltrates down into. In this case, you're removing that, and now your bottom of your pond really is the top of the actual standing water. So you pick up several feet of area that you can store water within storm water. It comes off its flow. So that's the advantage. That's why the pond can be a little bit smaller. It's just deeper now.
Just one other comment about the conservation letters. The last line says that a performance bond be required as the town is still addressing ongoing problems caused by poor design and maintenance of past projects by this developer. First of all, I think all issues have been settled at this point. Isn't that true?
Most.
And they weren't necessarily an issue from this developer. They were from somebody else that had it, and he's taken it over and corrected the problems.
That's correct.
Okay, I'm not arguing the fact of whether the performance bond ought to happen, but I don't think the letter stated clearly the issue.
Okay.
So with that, I met with the Conservation Commission about a little over a year ago, back in October of 20, and showed them a concept of this. We hadn't done a full design, showed an infiltration pond within that buffer area, that woodland buffer area. Followed up with a subsequent site walk, and then at that meeting, that site walk, the general consensus was keep as much out of the buffer as you could, but they conceded that you could have we could have the drainage pond within this area, which is not uncommon. I mean, there's plenty of projects that I've seen go through this town, submitted by my office as well as other engineers and surveying firms that show drainage and associated drainage structures within the buffer area. So not uncommon. So now to ask kind of at this point to completely remove that from the buffer is a major design change and a major change to what he's considering for these types of units. So that being said, then I obviously you're not going to vote on any sort of a conditional use permit tonight because I don't have the support of the Conservation Commission at this point. Is that kind of my understanding?
Well, I guess that would be a discussion of the board, and the board would have to make that call.
But
And the board hasn't had that discussion.
So what I'm saying is I put the time in to meet with this board, the Conservation Commission, had a preliminary meeting to show them a concept, took the time to do the site walk and got a general consensus that it was okay to have the pond, the infiltration pond within the buffer, but everything else was to be kept out of it. All the hard surfaces, building, paving, that sort of thing, which we complied with.
Right.
And now this plan improves upon that by getting even just the grading out of it and just the retaining wall. I was hoping that they would see that basic change in the design and write a favorable report, and that's not what we got here tonight.
Hugh, has Mr. Como seen your new plan? I just wonder. I
Who's
know
that?
you don't have to.
Mr. Cuomo?
Yeah,
No, I didn't submit those to him.
okay, I just wondered if he might find this to be reasonable, which would also then help with any discussion with the Conservation Commission about going forward with a positive reply from them. That's just,
Well, I think it's also important to go on the record that, someone correct me if I'm wrong, that input and comment by conservation is something that this board is required to take and consider as part of the application. But the final decision rests with this board.
I agree.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to try to read the letter from Rockingham County Conservation District, Mike Cuomo. But this is not based on the most recent design, so, but I will read it because we've received it and it should go into the record. So it's dated October 18, 2021, and it has 4 points. Number 1, this letter is in reference to the proposed Granite Fields commercial condominiums. At the request of the Planning Board, Rccd staff has reviewed the wetland buffer determination submitted with this application. The following documents were provided for review, and it goes through the documents. You all set, officer?
Thank you.
Thank you. Talks about the site plan, the wetland buffer report from Mr. Perwerda, and the planning board minutes. Number 2, after reviewing the above documents and visiting the site, I agree with Mr. Perwerda's wetland buffer determinations. The forested wetland requires a 60-foot buffer, and the shrub/emergent wetland requires a 90-foot buffer per Article 202, Table A. Number 3, as noted by others, the last 2 sentences of the first paragraph on page 2 of Mr. Perwerda's 2019 report has errors. These errors do not change the conclusion of this report, and the correct buffers are shown on the SEC plans. The sentence should read, quote, based on the above, the wetland buffer scores 2 points for groundwater recharge/discharge. This yields a total of 7 points for a 60-foot wetland buffer, end quote. The draft plan shows wetland buffer clearing and earth moving associated with the proposed entrance, the wall, one of the snow storage areas, and most significantly, the proposed infiltration basin. These activities significantly diminish the wetland buffer and reduce its effectiveness. I encourage the planning board to consider if these features can be located outside the wetland buffer. Sincerely, Michael Cuomo, soil science, certified soil scientist, certified wetland scientist, and designer. Now, I don't know what his comments would look like, based on the redesign. I don't know. We'll let the board ponder that. Let me just read a couple of quick additional comments here. Highway Department has no comment other than to refer to their previous comments. And the Building Department asked, is there enough parking for the intended or proposed uses? again, I'm having to remember back, but I'm pretty sure we had the discussion about parking, did we not?
It's,
We've talked about parking several times, and I don't think that with the conservation's letter, it should be reduced by any means.
No, but then the,
The highway comments were specific to parking, I remember his comments were.
Oh,
He just had previous
what
comments
was
about
your
parking.
recommendation, Glenn? Because that hasn't been addressed, has it yet? It wasn't,
they came, yes, they provided, since the last time we met, they provided easement language between the abutting park property owners to allow sharing on those driveways. Those parts would be.
so that has been addressed?
That's an existing deed easement that's recorded. and agreed to.
Any other comments, Glenn?
no, there are no other comments. We do have, I was just looking through the rest of this.
Those were the original comments from highway.
Oh, these are the original comments from Highway that they said to refer to, and it says additional parking spaces needed based on observed actual daytime usage.
Who was that? Is that from Rich?
That's from Richard, Richard St. Hilaire, the road agent. Looks as though the septic design has been approved.
Yes.
Yeah, we've got a copy of that. Okay, and the rest of these, there's a declaration of basically the condo docs. Have we done any review of those with council at our end?
Not with council. I've looked at them,
You have, okay,
but council has not.
okay.
So can I ask you a question about parking? When I read the waiver, it said that the current parking lot now contains 144 spaces.
Correct.
So I counted the spaces that are there, and all I can get is 95.
On the plan shows,
Mhm.
Yeah.
there's probably additional places. I went out there and counted it twice. Had my draftsman counted, I counted it twice for the total amount of parking spaces. May not be shown entirely on this plan. There may be more parking spaces over there on land unit 3.
I think that's exactly the case.
Yeah, there's 144. Confirmed, I also confirmed it with Jim, the property owner.
Okay, okay.
And I
You're
would
right,
like
there
to
are
note
more on
that,
land unit 3.
so right across from the clubhouse on Diamond Oaks Boulevard, there's also an additional overflow parking lot that could be constructed there. I know when we came in with the veteran condominium units, we're gonna build a septic system next to the existing septic system. It's gonna use up some of those spaces, but there's still an allowance for another additional 26 spaces over there if he needs it. So there's an area dedicated for additional parking should he need it, of 26.
Okay, so you've got a total of 144 plus the 26.
Plus you could add 26 to it. They're not there now, so you really can't say it's there, but there is an allowance for it.
So my next question is, as we've drawn the parking in front of the building, it appears that the parking blocks the bay doors. Now, usually when I've seen units like this, there's no parking in front of the bay doors, so that people can go in and out of the bay.
Right. Well, the parking spaces are gonna be assigned to that actual unit owner.
Mhm.
So if they need to access to the bay, they control the vehicles in front of the building. So it won't be an issue for them. So of the spaces that we've allotted, which is 8 per unit, and that's the typical unit, 4 of them will have assigned parking, the other 4 will be just basically shared parking within 2 land units, 3 and 5.
Do you show signage or anything that's going to let other people know they can't park there?
Yeah.
Is that shown on the plan?
Yeah, unit.
Yeah, we
one.
had noted it.
I just want to put in the minutes, so what page is it on, so I can,
Two.
There's 2 no parking signs on the back that I can see, but I didn't see where there were any in the front.
It shows the assigned parking. per unit.
Yeah, unit.
But it doesn't say parking per unit. In other words, if unit,
I mean, yeah, but you might have a
A1
sign
is,
on the plan, does that say on the plan?
it shows 2 no parking signs on the back, I would think there should be at least 4. But, as you're looking at the front, okay, so there's 4 units assigned to unit A1, ABC, business buys unit A1, I would think that we'd have signs in front of those that said parking for ABC business only.
Yeah, because what's to keep me from parking there?
Right. What's, somebody put a golf, just park with the golf for the day.
You probably put signs like on the door.
Yeah, that's fine, we can do that.
If there's something that says no parking,
That's fine.
Yeah.
and I'd really like to see the no parking signs on the back at more than 2 spots, like one in front of each unit.
Yeah, it's like this. 1, 2, 3.
So the drainage analysis, Charlie, that's in the package here,
Sure.
is that based on the original design or on the redesign?
That's for the revised wet line.
It is.
It is, yeah.
And Dennis, you've seen this?
Yes, that's what my comment was.
Yeah.
As far as the volume
Yep.
concern that I have.
I tend to kind of agree with Peter on this. It seems like they've done a lot more to protect the wetlands with this plan than was done before.
I didn't see any before, now you see it.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, when this originally went in, there was really no compensation for all that running off that parking lot. That's a big parking lot down there. And now they're taking care of it. Seems like there's more water runoff from the existing parking lot than what they're making. And they take care of it.
How deep is the basin?
It goes from, but basically the top of the berm area is right around 120, 121, and the bottom is 112. So 121 to 112.
I'm just wondering, I didn't see anything in our ordinances, but is there any fencing or anything that should be considered or required around if there's gonna be standing water?
Very quiet.
It's a very good point.
Just as a parent,
Yeah, I think.
insurance may require
Man-made-
it.
A man-made pond is probably higher
What's
requirements.
that?
A higher man-made pond, as you point out, it probably has higher requirements for standard of care than a natural pond, so it could require that.
Great suggestion.
I have one more thing, I meant to put in my comments, but on the file lane on page 2, it shows the snow storage areas being in the parking area. And I wonder if that would impact the ability for fire apparatus to turn around there, so perhaps those snow storage areas should be outside of the pavement?
Well, I put those there because we've got retaining wall on that side, it's gonna be holding back some of the fill. So I made these turnaround areas deep enough so I could still leave a 24-foot deep turnaround T within that T area. And so the far outer ends of the extents of those 2 T turns can be utilized for a little bit more snow storage. So I did.
As long as the fire department is okay with that area for the turnaround,
Sure.
the snow wouldn't impact, the snow storage wouldn't impact things. So
But I
perhaps
think
get a comment from them about
We
that.
should definitely get, or I'll, if the board is okay with it, I'll directly submit this to the fire department and ask them for consideration of it.
And check about the fire requirements, suppression. Somebody leaving something out there.
Oh. All right. So we do have a waiver request. There was just one, Charlie? I see one. Or
Did we deal with the other one? The other one was just for preliminary review.
We took care of it.
We took care of that.
this one appears to relate to parking requirements.
It is.
Okay. Well, why don't I read this, since you took the time to write it out, Charlie? So it goes back to, must be the original application dated May 24, but revised December 2nd of this year. And it reads, please accept this letter as a formal request to waive the Town of Kingston's Site Plan Regulation 904.15B1 relating to off-street parking requirements. This is a proposal to seek approval from the planning board to allow for the construction of two-story 40 by 100 and 36 by 100 feet metal on slab commercial buildings. Each of the buildings will contain two-story commercial condominium units. The intended tenants / owners of the commercial condominium units is marketed towards trade businesses such as electricians, HVAC operators, plumbers, and the like. The parking area to support the proposed use is the shared parking area utilized by both the existing indoor sports recreation building on Land Unit 5 as well as the golf course clubhouse on Land Unit 3. These two existing businesses operate at different times during the year. The most intensive need for parking is the sports recreation building that by site plan approval required 111 spaces. The parking lot now contains 144 total spaces. Our proposed use for trade units would be a much less intensive use and typically needs 4 to 6 spaces per unit. The site plan parking space calculation only considers the area of the building and would require 35 total spaces to support the use. The proposal would provide a total of 8 spaces per unit or 32 total spaces. This amount of parking will be more than adequate to support the site and the proposed use. Should there be any additional need for parking, there is an approved but not yet constructed parking area across from the clubhouse on Diamond Oaks Boulevard that could accommodate an additional 26 spaces. And thank you for your consideration. Sincerely, Charlie Zilch, Project Manager. Okay. So,
Who determines that there aren't enough parking spots?
If there aren't,
Yeah, who determines that there's not enough parking so that they have to now, build the 26 spot?
At what point would
Yeah, at what point
would
would
that
that
kick
be
in? And I guess a related question is if Seacoast United has the highest demand, and I presume that facility is not used at all during the golfing season?
If it is, it's coordinated with Jim for times.
Okay. And so they have both the golf club, which I guess is Jim, but the Seacoast United signed off on this parking sharing?
Jim, has this been shared with the people from United,
During the golf season, Seacoast United's outdoors.
Right.
When golf season's over, Seacoast is indoors.
Right, my question is,
Everyone stop talking.
It's tough for Peter to do.
Okay.
Charlie had said that Seacoast United is the highest spaces, and that was where the 111 spaces requirement came from, which gives you a 32 space surplus and 33 space surplus. My question was, since you did the amendments to the shared parking, is that something that Seacoast United, as the owner of that condominium, has signed off on, saying that
It was
yes?
back in the beginning when Seacoast bought the building, yes.
Okay, so that's an existing even though these are new buildings, and you can add another space to sharing, they signed off on additional.
They provided that document to us, that had been recorded at the registry. It came in the emails today. It showed that, all of that had been.
Oh, the easement?
Yeah, all those easements had been given, so, a long time ago.
Okay, and so that's, I guess, the answer to the question, is Seacoast has signed off saying that we,
That was exactly the first day they bought the building.
okay.
I think the only time the lot is full is when you have a scramble. That's the
We
busiest.
don't do scrambles anymore.
You
But
don't?
yes, the only time would be pretty well full. But that is, guys show up, 100 guys show
Well,
up.
I was gonna say that if you put a foursome on 18 holes, it's 72 people. So with staff and everything, that's providing everybody's in their own car, so you're still pretty far under your limit.
Still under the 100 unit.
Yeah.
So Charlie, the waiver, I understand the waiver. So it's a waiver for how many spaces? I mean, what was your?
Well, technically, really, it's a waiver for only 3 spaces.
Okay,
The difference between the 35
It's
which is
different
required.
between the 35 and the 32.
which
And
is
we've maxed out the parking, as a matter of fact, we might even
Yeah, look at
have to eliminate one between the building or 2 between the building just because Dennis pointed out the danger from ice. So it's, it's a small amount, but also it's a waiver for consideration of the shared parking as well. We're not adding all the parking requirements altogether.
whenever anybody's ready, we can, sure.
I'll make a motion to approve the waiver.
Grant the waiver.
Grant the waiver, approve, grant.
Second.
So motion by Richard, second by Peter Baiki to grant the waiver from site plan regulation 904.15B1 related to off-street parking requirements. As described in the letter from SEC and Associates and as discussed here by the board. Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, that's unanimous.
Who seconded that?
Peter Baiki.
Thank you.
And then we have the conditional use permit.
Two of them. And I was looking for the documentation that Charlie provided, and I thought it must be, I thought I had seen it earlier.
Wetlands buffer and aquifer buffer, right?
This But one is for the use, right, within the Aquifer Protection District, and the other is for,
Mr. Chairman,
I don't have
make
it.
a copy if you'd like.
I thought I had seen it here, Charlie. Thank you very much.
Which one's which?
Okay, thanks.
Fine.
All right, is it the board's pleasure that you'd like to consider these at this point?
Yes.
Okay. So if, I'm going to go ahead and, well, I can go through and read this, but somebody should have the zoning book ready or the section of the zoning book so that, thank you.
Aquifer, is that where we're starting?
We're going to start with the aquifer, which is Article 201.4G. Is that what you've got? Okay.
I did update this request, this conditional use permit to reflect the latest plans.
Okay.
So I had to change some of the numbers, the coverage numbers, but they're reflective of the plan that's before you tonight.
It's
Right, May 24th, 2021, is that?
but revised December.
Revised to December 2nd.
I don't have that.
This is the,
I have a copy of it if you want it for your file.
well, Charlie gave us a copy, and I'll use that for reading it, and then I'll give it to Ellen for the file.
Perfect.
Are you using yours?
I'm not.
Oh. Oh,
Thank you.
all right. So just as a reminder to the board, on the conditional use permits, we need to affirm each item individually, vote on them, and then vote on, at the end, vote on the permit itself. And we have Mr. Bashaw joining us. And so Steve, you're off the hook.
I mean, if you're in the middle of a plan, it may be more appropriate if I've missed a bunch of stuff.
Well, if you want to sit this one out until we start, well, this is the last hearing for the night.
Okay. I'm here for moral support.
Well, we've got more things to discuss. but-
Okay. Yeah, if you're in the middle of something, it may be more appropriate for Steve to continue. I haven't already.
Well, if you're okay with that, then
Yeah,
that's
I'm
fine.
fine with that.
Because we've just voted on waiver, we're now getting doing conditional use permits.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, Steve, you're back on. Confusion? Okay. So, as I said, this is a revision for December 2nd, and Charlie has indicated that this has been updated to reflect the current design on the plan. And this is a conditional use permit request for the proposed use within the Aquifer Protection District as required by Kingston zoning ordinance 201.4G. The conditions have been met as follows, keeping in mind that this is the applicant's response to this. So the first one, and Robin, would you read what A is, the standard that we're looking to deal with?
Gladly. The proposed use will not detrimentally affect the quality of the groundwater contained in the aquifer by directly contributing to pollution or by increasing the long-term susceptibility of the aquifer to potential pollutants.
Okay, thank you. And the response from the applicant is that the proposed use with the proposed improvements will not detrimentally affect the quality of the groundwater contained in the aquifer by directly contributing to pollution or by increasing the long-term susceptibility of the aquifer to potential pollutants. This is a proposal for an amended site plan to allow for construction of one 4,000 square foot and one 3,600 square foot commercial condominium buildings and associated access and parking. The proposal utilizes a shared parking area already established to support the existing indoor sports recreation building on Land Unit 5 as well as the golf course clubhouse on Land Unit 3. The only new paved area will be located on the lower level just across, start that one again. The only new paved area will be located on the lower level for just access to the units. Okay. Lot coverage for the entire lot will increase from 5.4% to 14.4%, and within the aquifer from 0% to 7.4%, both well below the maximum coverage area allowed. The intended uses for the buildings are for trade businesses that do not have a need for the use of hazardous materials and/or toxic chemicals. A drainage and erosion control plan has been prepared by Stephen Cummings. This design consists of regrading the western edge of the existing parking lot to direct stormwater flows to a catch basin, which in turn connects to the lower parking area where stormwater flows are captured by a series of basins in that area. Eventually, all collected stormwater flow will be directed to a proposed wet pond designed to treat the runoff. Erosion control will be placed at the limits of all disturbed areas, and all disturbed areas will be loamed and seeded. A comprehensive drainage analysis report has been filed for this application. The proposed septic system is designed for the minimum flow allowed by New Hampshire DES for each building of 300 gallons per day or 600 total. So that's the applicant's response to the first standard, first condition.
I make a motion that we affirm special exception criteria one. Did you want to go through, you want to do them one at a time? That the proposed use will not detrimentally affect the quality of the groundwater contained in the aquifer by directly contributing to pollution or be increasing the long-term susceptibility of the aquifer to potential pollutants. Because the applicant has provided us with criteria which shows improvement of drainage from the existing parking lot and better control of drainage from the new construction.
Okay. Motion by Lynn,
Second.
second by Richard. Further discussion?
Can I just add, because it's relevant to a couple of these actually, do the condo docs clearly spell out what the prohibited uses are in the Aquifer Protection District?
Condo docs?
Don't know.
I got it here and
We can make that a condition of approval.
it does refer to,
The
it
hazardous
has to be
impacts.
in accordance with the local ordinances. That phrase is in there. That's mentioned. Amending the declaration, but, up here, relocation of unit boundaries.
I just worry that maybe people don't,
Read the ordinance, they might want to see.
or even the condo docs
Docs, yeah.
sometimes. So I guess to the extent that it can be spelled out explicitly, and I don't know if it needs to be a condition, if folks are comfortable with that, but I'm just,
If we put a condition as the uses as of today may not incorporate future hazardous materials.
we could just
So
cite
maybe-
the regulation, right?
So
Cite
we,
the regulation.
cite the regulation.
So in the condo docs, we did add this was in Article 5.
Right.
There should be no outside storage of any equipment, materials, or supplies, and no storage of any hazardous materials other than that which is necessary for the conduct of business within the building, and only if stored and utilized in compliance with all state and New Hampshire laws and local regulations. That could be expanded on that.
Yeah, I mean, even just to add a sentence referencing the regulation, what is it, 201.4E?
Or you could just refer to it by name, the aquifer protection ordinance, and that way it would cover any further amendments.
No 24, Charlie.
Yeah.
Prohibited use.
Front page. No 24, the first page.
All these materials.
Yeah, that could be expanded as well then, to add that restriction to the aquifer. So with that, coupled with the restriction in the condominium doc, I think that would suffice.
Are you guys talking to me or just to each other? Because I can't hear a single thing you're saying.
I just brought up the point that note 24 talks about all waste materials and recyclables will be contained within the building or provided storage facilities and shall not otherwise stored on the property. There shall be no storage of hazardous and or toxic materials, fuels, or chemicals on the site.
Okay.
Note 24, sheet 1.
So you're talking about the possibility of expanding note 24.
Note 24 as well as the condominium.
As well as in the condo
document
doc.
to note the restriction within the aquifer protection district.
And
Call that out specifically.
are you thinking sort of a broad catch-all of stating the, compliance with the aquifer, restrictions within the aquifer protection ordinance?
Yes.
Right, and that's why I think instead of saying it by number and paragraph number, because sometimes we'll add a paragraph in front of that, and E may become something completely different. I would just say, no use is prohibited by the aquifer protection ordinance would be permitted.
Robin, does that get you where you want to go?
That is more than satisfactory.
Okay.
And And then I know Dennis had talked about the volume and everything. I just want to get confirmation from you that you feel that this proposed detention basin is sufficient to.
Wetland pond.
What's that?
Wetland pond.
Wet pond.
Wet pond, yes, it's still referred to in this plan as a proposed detention basin, but the wet pond is sufficient to contain or treat the runoff from the.
Well, I think the size of it has to be checked again, and it might have a little bit different parameters on the size of it and the height of the berm, for instance. But, you know, as far as water treatment is concerned, you not only have, you have the initial treatment of the catch basins that pick up sediments that handle, that hold some of the contaminants. Catch basins if you think there's pollutants in there, certainly the catch basins capture pollutants. So you have multiple catch basins in the process of the water draining down through. You have the 4-bay area that also captures any pollutants or surface runoff that filters through that stone berm. And then the wet pond also has a place for sediments to settle out and any other contaminants to treat the water before it reaches the discharge point. So yes, it is something, and it's a good point that Peter brought up that there isn't any treatment now, but there will be when this gets done.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So we're in further discussion on the first provision under the conditional use permit request. Further discussion. All right, so the motion is to affirm that that first standard has been met, and Lynn verbalized it well enough. I'm not going to repeat that. So, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? All right, that carries unanimously. The second one, Robin?
The proposed use will not cause a significant reduction in the long-term volume of water contained in the aquifer or in the storage capacity of the aquifer.
Okay, and the response is from the applicant that the proposed use will only require a minimum of employees to operate the businesses. The limited use will ensure that there will be no reduction in long-term volume of water within the aquifer. Coverage of the lot will be considerably less than the amount allowed within this district, allowing for maximum recharge area.
I make a motion that we affirm that the proposed use will not cause a significant reduction in the long-term volume of water contained in the aquifer or in the storage capacity of the aquifer, because the applicant has, in the plan, has noted that there is only a minimum number of, they only require a minimum number of employees to operate the businesses, which will ensure that there will be no reduction in long-term volume of water within the aquifer. Coverage of the lot will be considerably less than the amount allowed within this district, allowing for maximum recharge area.
Motion by Lynn, second by Richard. Further discussion. Ellen?
John, I apologize because I haven't read the document, the condo docs. Do the condo docs clearly specify the kind of uses that will be allowed in there? I'm fine with the proposal. I'm just concerned that in the future it could change and be a different kind of proposal that would need more parking, which you don't have. So do the condo docs, now I'm not saying they have to say you can only be an electrician or only be a plumber, but do they allude to the fact that you talked about trades and things of that in the condo docs?
They do, and I'm at a loss to word maybe. I thought we had in there that any use is going to be restricted by the amount of parking that's there and sewage. So that'll keep anybody from trying to come in and open up a pizza shop or something of that nature. And then like I said, I know we had that in there somewhere. I can just double check, but
Does this have to do with the condition? Can we come back to this?
Well, it talks about, I would, except it talks about the minimum number of employees for the businesses for this particular item. So that's why I brought it up now, was the condo docs.
Yeah,
So
I
it has
didn't bring the
something-
entire document, I just brought, it was the last provision that you highlighted, Charlie Cleary highlighted for us. I can double check, but if it's not part of this, it should be part of it, and I'll make sure it's part of it. That it restricts the only uses that are allowed in that commercial district, and only uses that are, that can conform with the restrictions of the site.
Yeah, it's fine to
Limited
have like
parking and
a
sewage.
sentence that says, something about parking limits the use, basically, is what you just said.
I remember seeing that somewhere.
I thought it is in the first draft.
That was a note on here.
I don't see it, could be here. Okay, further discussion?
That was Lynn, and who seconded it?
Richard?
Thank you.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, abstentions, that's unanimous.
Yeah, it appears that most of the permitted uses probably wouldn't work in these, most of the uses wouldn't work. So they'd have to come before us for a special exception.
Guessing they're probably more retail-oriented types
Well,
of
what we've
things.
got here, business center development, retail businesses, supermarket, grocery store,
Yeah,
banks, I mean, personal services, such as but not limited to barber and beauty shops and laundromats, which is a tremendous amount of water, so that's something you might wanna really restrict, but,
It just makes it easier if the condo docs say it, that way we
does.
don't have to get involved in, that kind of thing.
Robin?
Ready?
Mhm.
The proposed use will discharge no wastewater on site other than that typically discharged by domestic wastewater disposal systems, and will not involve on-site storage or disposal of toxic or hazardous waste as herein defined.
Okay, and the response from the applicant is that the proposed use will not discharge wastewater other than typical domestic waste, and that there are no floor drains proposed.
I make a motion that we affirm number 3 under the special exception criteria. The proposed use complies with all other applicable sections of the article because the applicant has stated that the proposed use will not discharge wastewater other than typical domestic waste, and there are no floor drains proposed.
Second. Motion by Lynn, second by Richard. Discussion?
I think Ellen's point on the last one would apply here, as long as there's a notation about what kind of businesses are allowed and not allowed in this, especially as Clint pointed out, beauty shops, barber shops, medical restaurants and things like that.
Which you might be able to do just by restricting the amount of use, gallons per day from each unit.
Yeah, that's something, I think if there's a restriction of the parking is in the condo docs, and restrictions of the septic use, or whatever it is in the condo docs, that eliminates a lot of the things.
Right. So I would think it would be met as long as we have a condition.
So I think there's a revelation going on there. Charlie, what have you got?
And Dennis, with his sharper eye than mine, apparently, it is in there, it's one of the most recent changes, and the note was, any use which requires more than 8 parking spaces or greater than 150 gallons per day of sewage flow shall not be permitted in any units.
There you go.
So that restricts it right there.
That's perfect.
And just for reference, Charlie, where is that?
That would be in Article 5, 7E and F.
You got another condo.
Should be on page 23 of the docs.
Oh, we don't have all those.
We've got a.
Oh, wait a minute.
They use more than 8 parking spaces, or how many gallons per day, Charlie? They do.
It's 150 per unit.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, on page 22. restriction, it's titled the Restriction on Use of Units.
Ah, there it is. Yeah, I'm on board, Marl.
Okay, further discussion? And we're dealing with number three?
C.
Three? All in
It's a
favor,
lot.
say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Unanimous, thank you. Robin, number 4?
D, the proposed use complies with all other applicable sections of this article.
And as long as we got that comment that you made. that happened.
Yeah, I feel like that covers it, right?
That would.
Yeah.
That you can't have a prohibited use.
I affirm that use regulation 201.4H, number 4, hydrogeological study shall be submitted for uses whose septic system is designed for more than 2,400 gallons per day. In Zone A, a study shall be submitted for any septic system designed for more than 2,000 gallons per day. Because the proposed use complies, because of,
Lynn, you've jumped to the next one.
What are we doing?
Yeah, Lynn, you're on E, and we're doing D.
no, actually, I was on number 4 under H with the criteria, not under E.
Oh, yeah, just special exception, we're on the conditional use.
We're on the
Talking about
conditional
H.
use,
I'm sorry,
which is G.
that because the proposed use complies with all other applicable sections of the article.
There we go.
Bingo!
I think of Daffy Duck every time I hear that word. Applicable. Some of you aren't old enough to know about that.
Richard, are you gonna second that?
Yes, second.
Thank you very much.
Daffy Duck will.
Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? That carries unanimously as well. And the final one, Robin?
E, Lynn, get ready.
So the one that Lynn just responded to. Yeah.
A hydrogeologic study shall be submitted for uses whose septic system is designed for more than 2,400 gallons per day in Zone A. A study shall be submitted for any septic system designed for more than 2,000 gallons per day.
Okay. And the response from the applicant is that the septic system is designed for a flow of 600 gallons per day maximum.
I make a motion that we affirm section E. The hydrogeological study shall be submitted for uses whose septic system is designed for more than 2,400 gallons per day. In Zone A, a study shall be submitted for any septic system designed for more than 2,000 gallons per day because the plan is designed for a flow of 600 gallons per day maximum.
Second.
Motion by Lynn, second by Richard. Basically, the septic system falls under the threshold for requiring any of the hydrogeologic studies. Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? It carries unanimously as well.
I make a motion that we permit the conditional use request because all criteria for the conditional uses have been met.
Second.
Motion.
Can I, with the conditions that the notation on the plan on the condo docs are added as previously discussed?
Friendly amendment to your,
Friendly amendment.
to your motion?
I was thinking to put it in a different place, but that's the perfect place to do that, so I'm good with that.
You good with that? Richard?
Yes, ma'am. Sir.
Thank you very much. Okay. Further discussion? All in favor of granting the conditional use permit for this use within the Aquifer Protection District, signify by saying aye.
Right.
Aye. Opposed by no. Abstentions? And that carries unanimously. Okay. Do you have copies of this?
Oh, God, I hope so.
Oh, the microphone?
I have Glenn's.
Yeah, and it's revised. Yeah, you got
Yeah,
it.
I got that.
All right. Let's see. Well, do you feel up to the conditional use permit for
Yeah, wetlands? Am I
for the
looking at them all
wetland?
the way?
And I guess the question is, do you feel you have enough information based on what, I mean, it's from RCCD, it's not based on the current plan, and you do have current response from Conservation Commission, so it's up to folks at the table as to whether you feel you have enough information to move forward with this conditional use permit.
And doesn't Dennis need something updated on this?
That can be a condition, though, we talked about that, the depth of the pond, correct?
Yeah.
So that
I
can be,
mean, Charlie's gonna look at that, was he
Yeah.
coming to look at that, just modify it a little bit.
I mean, if there is a modification to be made, it's not a substantial one. It would really, rather than probably change anything on here from what it is now. So we wouldn't expand it greatly, if anything at all.
I just want to remind the board that it's 8:30, you end at 10, and you have several warrant articles to discuss. Just wanted to put that out there.
And Charlie, did we say earlier that you were going to go back to the Conservation Commission or no?
Well, I mean, if need be, I mean, like I said, I had met with them a year ago with a concept showing this basically the same layout. You know, and we got some consensus from the Conservation Commission back then that they were okay with the infiltration or the drainage pond within that buffer area. And like I said, it's similar to many proposals that I've submitted before. We've allowed drainage within this buffer area. I've seen other applicants in here with the same kind of proposal where buffer areas of drainage and drainage structures were allowed within the buffer. So to say you can't have it now would be a great hardship for myself and client. We'd have to go back and redesign this thing completely. Moving forward, I'd be hesitant to design anything in a woodland buffer from now on. But I think it'd be tough to ask me to change it now, particularly when I did my due diligence and I did meet with these people before and you know, I had a scheduled meeting and had a site plan. So it's entirely up to the board if you're comfortable moving forward with it. I think design is an improvement and I think it does what it's supposed to do.
What's the pleasure of the board?
What would be the timeframe to get review from RCCD on the new set of plans? Would that substantially?
Well, it's a tough time of year, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, holidays and everything, I'm not sure, and I have no idea what their schedule is.
Yeah, and Dennis has looked at the plan.
Right, no, it's, currently, the letter that we have is the October one, and that's not an endorsement, so, and not to like to go against because that we requested from, Barclays. But there's a good chance now that would be revised. So.
Our RCCD's comment letter is out of date because the new plan shows that they pulled activity backward as a result of everyone agreed that the setback is actually 60 feet, not 50 feet, or 55 feet.
Mm.
Did Michael go, I don't remember his letter saying anything more than that.
Well, the last sentence,
The last sentence.
Diminish the wetland buffer and reduce its effectiveness. Encourage the planning board to consider if these features can be located outside.
What
the
says,
wetland buffer, not-
the draft plan shows wetland buffer clearing and earth moving associated with the proposed entrance, the well, one of the snow storage areas, and most significantly, the proposed infiltration basin. These activities significantly diminish the wetland buffer and reduce its effectiveness. I encourage the planning board to consider if these features can be located outside the wetland buffer.
I think that's what the Conservation Commission changed from a year ago. Their response was based on that letter. Sure.
Now, my conditional understanding that Mr. Coleman's involvement was to check the accuracy of the buffer setbacks,
Correct.
okay, as well as to review the buffer report. he took what, in my opinion, a step further and reviewed the plan and the impact of the infiltration pond within that buffer. And his statement simply says, well, if you move it out, there'd be less impact. I think it's a pretty simple statement to make. Has far-reaching effects to actually do that. But like I said, this is not uncommon. Something that's been accepted in the past. To change it now would be, like I said, a great for himself and his client to have to do this. I think we've done everything we can to protect the wetlands and maintain the graded buffers we possibly can. There's no impervious area within the buffer setback. Moved everything out of it. We've gone with retaining walls, taken all the grading out of it and allowed the graded buffer that we can. The only thing we're asking for is that drainage pond area within.
And I think I'll go back to what Peter said at the very beginning, now we've got some protection where we didn't have any before, we don't have any now.
Well, and it sounds like the answer to the question that was asked in the statement you just read is no. There is no alternative location that's feasible. Is that accurate?
Well, not to support this design, we'd have to redesign it, and I don't see him having access to the lower units, and that basically effectively cuts off half of his marketable area.
Dennis?
So just to help you out a little bit more too on this is that stormwater detention area is primarily grass slopes from the top of the berm down into the natural grade where the limited cut is. So you're taking a treated area, yes, you're taking a treated area, but out of there, but you're really establishing grass, which is treats or filters the water, any water that comes around through there, and so you're really only talking about the interior of the pond area, which is treating the water that comes off the impervious surfaces. So that is, once it's constructed, it's all going to be pretty much grass in the pond area.
Right.
It's not going to be pavement that's in the buffer zone. It's not going to be a building in the buffer
Right,
zone.
it's not gonna be a highly engineered detention
It isn't gonna
basin
be-
with riprap walls and.
It isn't going to be a structure that's going to cause any impact to the wetlands.
So
So
then,
I don't know if that's helpful or not.
simple question is, it sounds like you're satisfied.
Well, all I'm just saying is to help you guys, just to be able to say that, you know, this structure that's in there is a stormwater detention basin, wet pond, and it's primarily gonna be a grassed area. It's not gonna be pavement, it's not gonna be, a building that's in the buffer zone. So, as far as, being able to treat runoff and be able to function, as a surface, area, it's not gonna impact the wetlands because it's more or less grass. There may be a little bit more runoff in the outside edge, but you're controlling the inside part of it by detaining it. So, by and large, the stormwater detention calculations show that there's no net increase in runoff by detaining water.
So is it the wet pond itself that is intruding into the wetland buffer area, or are there other parts of this that are?
Yeah, the wet pond itself is within the buffer zone, yes.
And that's what's,
That's part of the treatment contained area.
I understand, but it's that is requiring us to consider a conditional use
Be
permit.
concerned, yes, but it's, like I'm saying, is that that's part of the treatment process that's in there, but it isn't impacting the wetlands, which is downslope from that.
There were three things, right? That the
Yes.
snow storage and then the well radius. Is that accurate?
The snow storage has been brought out, correct me if I'm wrong, Charles.
It's
Brought
still-
out, and
There's still one in there, and the well is in by a few feet.
The well
Well,
is, yeah.
But when you look at the three criteria for the conditional use permit,
Yeah.
Like 3/4.
it appears to me that.
So let's do it to it.
Yep. Page 202.
Yeah, I remember there was that one spot.
All right, I'm hearing a couple of voices saying let's go ahead and proceed with the conditional use permit discussion.
Yep.
Peter, you're a yes.
Yes.
Robin?
Hold on,
I mean, this design was a response to the board asking that physical activity be pulled out of the wetland buffer. If the snow storage area left, from my perspective, what you're left with is a wellhead frequently in wetland
Yeah.
buffer areas all
Frequently,
over town.
frequently, yes.
Frequently, sometimes in actual wetlands.
Right.
So, I mean, that to me is not a very big concern. The snow storage area in the greatest conditions isn't a big issue, but in the worst conditions is a scary issue because it could be contaminated. If Charlie could pull that out, then what I have is a well that we always have in these areas and a created wetland is what we've done in the wetland buffer.
Right.
To better treat the runoff of the impervious surfaces on site in order to better preserve the wetland that lies down graded.
So I hear that you're arguing in favor of this.
I'm saying that for this design, what Charlie did was respond to what we asked him to do.
Yeah.
And if that snow area left, he really did what we asked him. I think what we asked him.
Did that get pulled out?
I think he's saying he could do that.
I can do that, I can take care of that one, I can move that out of it. There was another one, a larger one, that was near where the pond was, that one I had taken out of there. I missed this other little one that was over by the well area. That could be, we could take that out, and there's still be plenty of snow storage down below.
Because if that's out, then essentially I think that he's accomplished everything that we asked him to do.
So we could put that as a condition on the approval.
And it would explain why we're not, it's justification that this design is actually doing what we want it to do in a way that isn't disruptive to the wetland, even though it is disruptive to the buffer area, but that's why we have a conditional use permit. We know that there are instances where there's going to be activity in the buffer.
I agree.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, no, they're not. Well, you actually might wanna do that, but you don't have to.
So I vote we move forward and make that a condition.
Well, we have to go through this thing and when we get to the end, yeah,
But
okay.
that we do
Yes,
proceed.
okay. Lynn's already expressed in favor of doing this. Peter Coffin, Steve, Peter, you guys said yes, okay. All right, so it looks like we're gonna move forward with the second conditional use permit discussion. I should probably have Charlie read these when we,
Would you like it?
well, yeah,
When we get to the response?
because it is your application after all. I don't know why I was doing it, but
Well, it's
I,
in Charlie language, so I can probably read it a little quicker too.
Len, do you have a copy of this too?
I believe so.
well, since I'm not gonna read it,
Oh,
you're
that's
welcome to
right.
it.
So I can make a motion that,
Oh, no, not yet. Robin?
The proposed construction is essential to the productive use of land not within the wetlands conservation district.
Okay, so the first part of the response, basically I kind of reiterate what the project is, so I'm just gonna get right to the point of it here. So all of the proposed improvements / structures, impervious surfaces are designed outside of the allotted wetland buffer as determined by Timothy Ford, a wetland scientist. This request is to allow for the construction of a stormwater management pond within the buffer. This pond is located downslope of the proposed project within the buffer approximately 37 feet from the closest point of the wetlands. The buffer in which we are proposing to construct the pond have been documented by Timothy Ford, and his report has been reviewed and approved by the town's consultant Mike Cuomo of Rccd. When I say approved there, I meant that he concurs with the information within the report, not that he approves of the plan. I don't mean to allude to that. The report notes that there are no occurrences of rare and endangered species within the project area as reported by the National Heritage Bureau and from on-site observations with both Mike and himself. The New Hampshire Wildlife Action Plan shows the majority of the buffer area is supporting landscape on the ramp habitat maps, and the woodland is comprised of typical tree species such as red oak, white pine, red maple, etc., commonly found in the area. Soils are well drained to moderately well drained glacial till and support this type of stormwater drainage system proposed. This proposal to allow for the stormwater structure within the buffer was presented previously as a concept to the Conservation Commission and was accepted. The location, downslope of the site improvements is essential to the productive use of the land, and with proper construction and maintenance will not adversely affect the quality of the buffer or the ground cover.
I make a motion that we affirm the proposed construction is essential to the productive use of land not within the Wetlands Conservation District. Because
No, you're not gonna read that whole thing again, are you?
No, because the location downslope of the site improvements is essential to the productive use of the land with the proper construction and maintenance will not adversely affect the quality of the buffer or the groundwater. The last sentence of his whole thing.
I have the same concern, Ellen.
Motion by Lynn,
It would be a copy paste for you, Ellen, but
I remember.
and a second. Motion by Lynn, second by Richard. Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Carries unanimously. And the second one, Robin.
Design and construction and maintenance methods will be such as to minimize detrimental impact upon the wetlands and will include restoration of the site as nearly as possible to its original grade and condition.
And the applicant's response?
A drainage and erosion control plan has been prepared by Stephen Cummings. This design consists of regrading the western edge of the existing parking lot to direct stormwater flows to a catch basin, which in turn connects to the lower parking area where stormwater flows are captured by a series of basins in that area. Eventually, all collected stormwater flow will be directed to a proposed wet pond designed to treat the runoff. Erosion control will be placed at the limits of all disturbed areas, and all disturbed areas will be loamed and seeded. A comprehensive drainage report has been filed with this application. Maintenance of the system shall be the responsibility of the condominium owners, as noted on the plans and described within the condominium documents. And periodic inspections by the planning board and/or their agents is incorporated into this application.
Okay, thank you.
I affirm that the design, I make a motion that we affirm that the design and construction and maintenance methods will be such as to minimize detrimental impact upon the wetland and will include restoration of the site as nearly as possible to its original grade and condition, because the applicant has stated in his response.
Well, hang on.
That's perfect. Perfect. Every time.
Just stop there, because the applicant stated such.
Nearly as possible.
Go.
Because the system is designed and will be constructed to meet this ordinance, and the maintenance methods are described both in the response and in the condo docs.
Okay. Motion by Lynn, second by Richard. Discussion?
Yeah, I would just say it would be detrimental to restore it to its original grade, because that would defeat the purpose of the retention pond or the, wet pond. So, I think that it falls under the as nearly as possible.
Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? And it carries unanimously. And the last one, Robin.
No alternative route which does not cross a wetland or has less detrimental impact on the wetlands is feasible.
So
Applicant?
with that, I think that speaking directly to roadway impacts through wetlands, but I did try to answer that some way. I know there's, it's more directed to, like I said, direct impact, but my response to it is currently the stormwater runoff from the existing parking lot sheet flows across the parking lot and accumulates in approximately 3 areas, creating a defined path of flow toward the wetland area with no treatment whatsoever. This proposal, although introducing additional impervious area, will capture the existing flow and proposed flow and contain it within the drainage system as proposed, thereby improving water quality. The space located outside of the buffer is limited in area as well as depth to water table to allow for closed drainage within the parking area. This proposal with a drainage structure located within the buffer is similar to what currently exists on the site, as well as a number of recent approved projects. Every effort has been made to reduce impacts within the buffer and does not directly impact the wetlands. So there's no direct wetland impact with this proposal.
I make a motion that we affirm that no alternative route which does not cross a wetland or has less detrimental impact on the wetland is feasible, because the applicant, in his response, has stated that the areas that previously have not been treated will be treated, and that if this does not cross, there's no other way in which we can cross the wetlands.
We're not crossing.
And it's not crossing the wetlands,
It's not
really.
crossing
It's
the
not
wetlands.
entering wetland.
I mean, you're right, Charlie, that particular one, it really refers to a wetland crossing kind of a situation. Anyway,
Second.
motion by Lynn, second by Richard. Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Carries unanimously. Would someone like to make a motion on the permit itself?
Do we need to have the condo docs approved by council first?
Are you talking about the overall?
Oh, on this condition, I'm
This
sorry.
one, just on
I'm
this.
sorry. I'm sorry, I'm ahead of
Sorry,
you.
I closed the book prematurely.
I did too.
You started answering, and I'm thinking to myself, I don't think that's what I had.
No, we're off it, we're off it. Okay, wait a minute.
Pass it on the city board.
I make a motion that we grant the conditional use permit for, the wetlands request.
With the condition that the, storage space closest,
Right,
the snow storage closest to the well is moved outside of the
Correct.
buffer area.
Still second.
Okay.
Does that understand you?
There was something about the snow storage and the buffer is moved.
Well,
The snow storage, closest to the well.
It's being moved outside of the buffer. Or is moved outside the buffer.
Okay. Discussion on that motion with the condition attached? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? And that's unanimous as well. So that conditional use permit is also granted. So we've granted the waiver and the two conditional use permits tonight. Okay. So now I guess it's how to deal now with the application.
So do we need to have the condo docs approved by the council first? By town council?
Or can that be a condition?
Can that be a
Can be,
condition?
can be a condition.
But if there are any changes, then they have to come back and it all has to be renoticed.
Well, we also have some things on Dennis's letter.
Yes.
I don't know if we've addressed them all and satisfied with. Where did I put it? The performance bond,
That would need to be done before we could give conditional approval, correct?
It's supposed to be.
supposed to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, why don't we continue for those
To make it
two things?
easier on you, I know I've got to go meet with the fire department.
Yeah.
We're gonna send these out for, town council review,
Yeah.
and I got a number of items to address. I have no issue with continuing, coming back and hopefully finalizing at the next meeting.
Will you be ready? Now, the January meeting is the hearing one.
First thing.
It's also the meeting for, last meeting for warrant articles, right?
No, you have two in January.
Two.
The first one in January is for warrants. The second one is if you have any changes, and then, but if you don't have to have them.
Okay.
So the third one would be the actual regular public hearing.
Okay.
So it would be the third Tuesday in January that we'd be looking at. whatever that date is. Alan's looking it up now.
January 18th. I make a motion that we continue this hearing to January 18th with all plans due into town hall by January 6th.
Yep, second. And,
Is that enough time? January 6th?
Yes.
Quick.
For town council, I'm not sure.
Well, you're not gonna have to amend plans for town council.
Nope.
Right.
No, you're right about that. And the changes in the plan are pretty minor.
So the motion is to continue to January 18,
At 6:30 p.m.
6:30 p.m. with new materials due no later than January 6 at noon time here at Town Hall. And a motion by Lynn, second by, did you do the second, Richard?
Yes, I did.
All right, thank you. Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Peter, did you vote?
Yes, I did.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, thanks, guys.
Great, and thank you, and if I don't see you, enjoy the holidays.
Have a great holiday.
Well, thank you. Appreciate the time.
I don't need to take a quick break.
One handed out to get anything from new language,
Not that I've seen. I've brought it into this guy. Yes, it's not. Nope, it's not. I gotta take a quick stretch break. I don't know if you guys wanna just continue on. Let's just deal with it.
Okay?
Well, my knees and so.
It might have feeling good for you.
Well, yeah, there you go. Well, it's a good thing you didn't do what I just did. Okay, I just want to make sure that we have a third public hearing that the applicant has requested to be withdrawn, so just so that we're on the record that for the application for Summit Distributing LLC is not being heard, and it has been withdrawn at the applicant's request. And the reason is that it was going to be it's for a large project that included a lot line adjustment and a site plan review, and they were gonna come in and do just the lot line adjustment and then do the site plan review after, and for whatever reason, the decision was made to just do it all together, so this one's been withdrawn, and we'll see it again as a full package.
Well, it was because originally they had hoped to have the special exception locked up.
Oh.
And they didn't.
Oh, okay,
So they withdrew the site plan. By withdrawing the site plan, there's no reason to use the boundary line.
okay,
And that, the ZBA action, the rehearing, all that, it's happening in January, so
okay,
we won't see it again for a while.
so we'll see it sometime after that,
February
okay,
5.
okay.
Maybe.
Probably in February, public hearing.
All right, I know we end at 10, I need to take a quick break if you guys want to stretch,
Technically.
or continue on.
Technically, I don't know if we end at 10.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
do.
10.
I thought the
can-
rules
We
said
can-
that
we can-
if
The
an
hearing's at
applicant
10.
hadn't started.
I'm leaving at 10:30 as an employee, so.
Let me read,
I think we should be finished with it.
well, let me read what it says. It says, applications not called and in progress by 10 will be continued to the
Right.
next meeting. The meeting will adjourn no later than 10:30 PM. So I guess we've got 10:30.
Do we want to spend a half an hour talking about?
Yeah. No.
Oh, cheeky tonight. Oh, cheeky tonight.
So, Lynn, you can,
See, now you're learning.
No, I think I'm gonna go.
Thank you for telling.
Yeah, I'll figure it out.
That
A little plans.
building that part, you know, the 3D computer thing, 3D printer, just for my anatomy is amazing.
Okay, Adam? Thank you. All right, we're back at 9:10 PM. So back to board business, correspondence, let's do the minutes first. Minutes of November 16, 2021. Or we could do correspondence first.
We're stalling until 10:30.
Well, you can think about the minutes, we'll do correspondence. First one is an invoice from Dennis, from our town engineer, I should say. And this was for work related to the project at Alternative Sales, Route 125. Total amount is $448.75. Board have any objection to me signing this?
No.
Don't do that. No. Second one is invoice from town engineer for work that he did on the application we just heard for TTAD. Total of $590. Objection to this one? Okay, letter from Sandy Maida of 10 Concannon Road in Kingston. This came into the board by email on December 8th, and it reads, on November 30, 2021, Lone Tree, a New England base camp for Boy Scouts of America, received word that in order to fund its responsibilities as part of the settlement of the lawsuits against Boy Scouts of America, Spirit of Adventure Council has authorized the sale of Lone Tree. This is very sad for Scouting and Country Pond. Lone Tree, a scouting base camp located on Country Pond, will be sold. The land and waterfront have been lovingly preserved and cared for by Scouts since the 1940s and is also home to a considerable amount of wildlife. Lone Tree never polluted our lake, never damaged the waterfront properties, never caused accidents or deaths, never brought invasive species into Country Pond, never harmed wildlife, never had loud parties that disturbed neighbors all night long. The sale and development of the property, 146 acres, will definitely impact Country Pond. When this property is sold and developed, it should be for something that would greatly benefit our town and residents. Or the town could consider federal and state conservation assistance programs. Conserved open space is greatly beneficial. There's a website here linking to conservation assistance programs. If conservation isn't feasible, in lieu of conservation, there are so many things that would be beneficial to Kingston. It would be great to have a college in our town, or a school like Phillips Exeter. Again, another website referring to land-grant colleges and universities. Or a company that would provide better paying jobs and not pollute our town or cause traffic problems. Thank you all who work for our town. Sandy Maida, 10 Concannon Road, list the phone number. And this was addressed to, it just came to planning, it didn't go to anybody else. Okay.
Sound like a prospective buyer. I was getting excited. Like,
There you go.
Buy and do what you want.
I know. I was talking to Richard earlier. That when I read this letter, it was the first I had heard that the camp was going to be sold. So, I mean, it's a prime piece of property, and it's.
What's its zone?
Rural residential?
Assuming it's rural residential, but I'm not sure.
Well, the front lot is commercial.
That's right.
Is it on 125?
Yeah.
Yes.
So then it would be
The
C3.
corner of West Shore.
Oh, yeah. Oh, the big open?
The,
Not
the,
big open field.
The
the
other
house
side.
that's
The
older,
other side.
that's,
Opposite Early's old property.
Yes.
Across West Shore Park.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's, it's an interesting
How
property
many
to go
did
for
they say it
sale.
was?
146.
146.
Yeah.
I think
see the
that's
wheels
both
turning.
lots, including both lots.
Memories retreat.
I imagine they're not gonna be selling it at conservation prices if they're trying to settle a lawsuit.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too, is that,
TikTok, ladies and gentlemen, TikTok.
okay.
Just saying.
So
Yeah,
anyway,
we can
that's,
go back
that's,
on
that's
the chart.
informational that came to us.
Yeah.
There's really nothing we have to do about it, but certainly if the person who wrote the letter had any interest in putting forth a petition article for the town to buy the property, well, there's an option. Okay. Letter, this was my attempt to help the select board understand the outdoor lighting ordinance with respect to the self-storage facility that they're wrestling with right now and the wall packs that are not shielded. And so I did a memo and cited the lighting ordinance and tried to make my explanation clear. I was going to come to the meeting last night to help them with it, and I was told that my services were not needed, and so I didn't come. And I don't know if Richard, you would like to update us on that.
I think it's a pending thing.
Yeah,
We're waiting on more information.
so be it.
So the Board of Selectmen didn't act on it last time?
No.
Of course not.
Wow.
What about the bank sign? You see that?
On camera, no less.
Did you see the bank sign?
Did what?
Did you go see the bank sign?
I did.
Look at that.
Well, I saw that, and then I went back to the ordinance, and the way I read it is that the business is allowed a freestanding sign,
But there is one already on that,
but there's the kiosk, with the.
Oh, yeah.
They need a permit.
Size.
For the kiosk? That's not on
No,
the,
for the sign that they currently have.
I didn't measure it, Peter. I saw the.
Well, I think it's funny when you drive up from 125 to 107,
Yeah.
and you look at that sign,
Yeah.
and you look at the little blessed sign that we gave him such a hard time with. I think it's just comical. It makes it an embarrassment to the board,
The
really.
which sign?
I mean, the little blesser,
Blesser, I
the
can't
blesser
remember
account.
Oh, the
We
Karen.
talked about that, remember that little small sign we had such a
yeah.
big deal about?
Yeah, because there's
It was a huge issue about that sign.
No, I'm with you, I hadn't seen it, we were coming back that way,
Yeah.
and I said, you have to drive by the bank, you have to see the
Yeah.
sign, and I went,
Then they just ran power to it.
they did?
Yeah.
It lights up now?
I'm sure it's not heated, so I'm sure there's gonna be a light now.
Oh,
You are out of
So we'll see what happens then. There's power going now.
so, Glenn, can I ask you if anyone has checked to see that in fact it meets the ordinance and the requirements?
Not to my knowledge.
Well, at the very least,
well, isn't that a
somebody
building
should.
inspector job or a code
Which sign?
enforcement officer?
The new bank sign, the freestanding.
That is the well, that is,
the tower.
Permit was issued for that sign.
the permit was issued, so
How?
it's in compliance.
That's not my job to answer.
Well, this is a selectman,
Well,
because the
it
building
is.
inspector
I'm
reports to
assuming The
you.
Board of Selectmen signed the permit, right?
No.
No. The building inspector, acting on behalf of the Board of Selectmen, signed the permit.
Does anyone want Board of Selectmen to follow up and get back to the planning board as to how a permit was issued for that? I'm asking the board, I just,
Well, they read the ordinance. Prove the permit, I guess.
I thought that if a business was putting up a sign, it says right in the ordinance that it has to be approved by the planning board first.
If it's
If it's in conjunction with a
if
site
it's
plan.
part of a
review.
site plan, then
And
it
if
needs
there's
to
been
be.
a, yeah, and if there's been a
Before-
site plan and it didn't have a sign on it, it's gotta come back to the planning board.
Yes.
I'll show you where it is in the book.
Yeah, we had that issue come up with
Yes.
another property.
I thought the planning board was involved when it was the site plan.
Where's the bill?
Okay.
It's a feature that needs to show on the site plan. And
But if there's no site plan being done,
then it has to be
There
amended.
is a site plan.
It's got a book.
I don't have a book.
Which ordinance do you want? The
So
sign?
the sign ordinance,
303-4.
303.
So the planning board and things final approval. Site plan review authority, the planning board signs will be included within the site plan review process. In all cases where sign permit is requested, for business either subject to or not subject to the planning board site plan review authority of the building inspector.
that's the point that I was making, if not subject to a site plan review. And there was no site plan review asked for on that, because it was a bank for a bank.
Right, we actually told them they didn't have to.
Right.
I mean, they asked, and we told her.
We said
they
no
did not
further,
need to.
no further review was needed
remember I didn't correct it, that's why I was.
for the change of use.
I thought
Okay,
it was
keep
something.
reading or we'll be here past 10:30.
Sorry, change of tenant, same use.
Oh, we won't be here past 10:30.
No.
We just may not know how much.
We'll have to look into it now.
Yeah, so, is this what, Peter just read?
What number you under?
General.
Yeah, general provisions, 303, A1. So, in the case of a change of or expansion of an existing commercial or industrial activity that falls within the site plan review authority of the planning board, signs will be included within the site plan review process. In all cases where a sign permit is requested for a business either subject to or not subject to the planning board site plan review authority, the permit will be applied through and granted by the building inspector. Which is exactly what happened, correct? Okay.
Yep.
There we go. Just make sure they have one, Marty, we'll be all set.
Okay. The next one has a cover thing from you, Lynn,
Oh, yes, that was, yeah.
saying that,
It was emailed to me and I passed it on.
okay. So this is a letter from
Because-
William.
Because, I do have the property for lease.
Okay. So this is from William Giannopoulos. It's addressed to this board. It's dated December 3rd. Let's see. It's regarding 3 Newton Junction Road. And it reads, I wish to withdraw my earlier letter requesting a change in the 3-unit mixed-use building. At this time, I plan to keep the current configuration of the retail unit. Please contact me at, here's the phone number, if you have any questions. So I guess that's just informational for us.
Mm-hmm.
And there's attachments, there's a picture of the building.
Yeah,
and
but that's stuff
the
you don't want to do
original.
anymore.
Right.
I can see that, so I get that. Thank you.
And the next one, automobile inspection request for Mark Beans and Sons at 1 Diamond Oaks Boulevard. Mark, I'm sorry, Vines?
Yeah.
Uh, I didn't think that was an inspection station. I thought that was his shop or his,
It is, unless he's inspecting his vehicles,
His own vehicle.
because his building, part of the use was vehicle maintenance for his
So-
snowplows and stuff, yeah.
so
His fleet.
is it for his fleet?
Does it say? Often they say fleet permit.
No, it's an auto inspection.
We ought to have that clarified.
Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause it's not-
This is just an application for an automobile inspection. It does not say that it's for his own business, his own vehicles.
Well, that would seem to me that that's an automobile repair facility, and that is not what the site plan is for
Right,
presently.
right, so, yeah. All right. Everyone
So I
comfortable?
should call him
Yeah.
and see if
Yeah.
it's actually his fleet that he's getting an inspection sticker for?
That would be my suggestion, but
And if it's not his fleet, he has to do an amended site plan
You
first.
can inspect your own stuff.
I was gonna wonder about that,
Yeah, can you inspect your own vehicles?
I think
I thought that you
You
could.
can?
You can.
I thought that you
I
could.
guess now that they're computerized, they can't really
it's hard to budget it.
budget that much.
Um,
Well, I guess the theory is if you're honest enough to inspect other people's vehicles, you should be honest enough to inspect your own.
But if the vehicle gets stopped,
you only
Okay,
have a certain
put your
time,
name on the
amount of
inspection
time to
sticker.
apply to this, and you won't,
and
you
it's not-
won't
and it
make,
wasn't
I'll
planned.
make it.
so you may wanna, I don't know if you wanna deny it with the idea that he can come back and reapply to get it done, but they ask that you reply to this as soon as possible, and you're gonna be another month before you can do anything with this.
Well, not a whole month, because we are.
Is one of their options defer action?
No, they used to be, that's what I was gonna ask to, but
Yeah.
that's removed now.
It's gone. It's gone. It's either deny or approve.
That's why I was gonna check it and say, oh, just say defer.
If it's deny or approve, then we have to deny. Pending, and we should clarify and say that we're denying simply because we need to
We
get
need
more
further
information.
information.
Since we can't defer.
Exactly.
So is that the board's
You're making us
consensus?
do
That's
one
how
of
we
the two.
deal with this?
We have to do the one that seems ugly.
And that's the
Okay.
first thing I checked to see if that was still there, and it's gone.
And under comments,
More information needed.
Yeah, board is investigating circumstances of the existing site plan approval.
Pending further information.
Yeah.
is that enough, just pending further information, or should we be more specific? Regarding,
I don't know, it has to go to the selectman for signature. Do you need further information? I mean, do you need anything other than pending further
I think
information?
that's fine, because I can tell them why.
I'll just put my initials beside the, so, should I hand this off?
No.
Oh.
Wow.
Well, I need to
All
make
right.
a copy of it before I give it to the selectman.
Thank you for that
Okay,
clarification.
the next one is the continuing discussion that we sort of started regarding an update on the self-storage facility lighting, but you're still working on that, so there's really no update at this point, right?
Right.
Okay. Another town engineer invoice, this one for Berkshire Dominion, the Pondview property, Saddle Up. $203.55.
Have they replenished their funds?
I think they did. I think they replenished it under a different name, which is why we
Okay.
had trouble finding it. But I think they did.
Okay, and the last item under correspondence is a letter from Alternative Sales from John Lumna, dated December 2nd. It says, we expect to have our building permitted under Ovid LLC to be completed late December, early January, but the balance of the site work, including roadway, not completed until late spring. As a result of continued business growth, shortage of materials, and job site delays, we need to use our new building site for storage under temporary conditions. May we have permission to do so until our site work construction is complete after building approval? And it's signed by John Lumna. And there's a post-it note on here saying, Glenn, any thoughts? I'm assuming that's addressed to that Glenn.
Yep. Signed Robert.
Oh, signed, it's a post-it note from Robert.
We've approved their activity. Seems like we would grant them this time frame to do some temporary storage there?
I think we should probably put a date on it, but I think that we've granted so many businesses because of COVID, different things that they're encountering. I mean, they have to be buying in bulk when they can get it and store it because otherwise the stuff is not available. So, I mean, it just makes sense that it's a COVID-related thing and that we need to be generous.
Probably the driveway too, being in the wintertime, it's gonna be hard for them to finish it, bring it up to grade and get it paved when the ground's freezing.
But people are hard time getting stone now too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I mean,
Hard
they probably just wanna store stuff down there.
I mean, they just told me, somebody just told me today that pipe that they got to run electrical wire used to be $2 a foot, and now it was 14 last month, and now it's 16.
Oh, yeah.
Dollars a foot.
I know.
PVC piping is
PVC
getting
piping.
more.
PVC, I can tell you all about it.
I mean, everything's crazy to get.
Sprinkles. Sprinkles are gone crazy.
The electrical pipe's fine, but not sprinkles.
Not the sprinkles.
Don't you be storing sprinkles.
My,
Hoarding other order.
my banana split doesn't need any sprinkles.
So, wasn't, you could answer this.
I can speak to it, I don't know if I have to like recuse myself from,
Well,
I mean, because it's not like a hearing.
no, what I wanted to ask is, wasn't storage the intended use for that
It is,
structure anyway?
it's a storage building, and
That's what I thought.
essentially what happened was, because of the delays in getting material to erect the structure, they couldn't get the complete concrete footing in, so it's all compacted, so essentially, whatever frost gets into the ground, they're gonna have to store stuff, pull it all out, to then finish pouring the floor on the inside, and then doing the pavement and everything, because when they hit the timetables, they couldn't even put down the top coat of paving and stuff like that, and to get everything finished and set.
So what they're really asking is to be able to use the building for its intended use before
An occupancy.
before they've got occupancy, really, and that before the site is finished.
And Robert's passing these things up because he has no authority to
Do that.
basically ignore a condition of approval of the planning board. So while he's being asked by several, there have been a couple of things, to just waive these kind of things. It's like, he can't.
When was their request, or what date did he say? I'm sorry.
December 2nd.
No, from what, till what did he ask? Did he
He said until late spring.
Till late spring? I think Blaine's a great thought that we give him a continuous to a certain date, because if not, it could be 5 years. I mean, we're
Can I make
gonna
a
give him some
motion?
kind of a date,
I
right?
say May 1st.
I was actually gonna say June 30th, because who knows how
Yeah.
things are going to be available, and
We
sometimes you're really
we can
rainy
always extend it
Aprils.
to the,
Yeah.
But I
I'm
was
sure
just
he's
gonna,
gonna want it done.
yeah, so I was just gonna say, make a motion to
He wants it
allow
done.
preliminary occupancy.
last month.
I know, that's what I'm saying, I'm sure they want it done.
Of course they do, they want to get it.
Yeah.
I would make a motion that we allow temporary occupancy until June 30th.
Temporary or preliminary, you said both.
Well, I'm thinking temporary until 2022.
Yeah. It's a storage unit.
Temporary occupancy.
So Steve did the second, I'm assuming that you're recusing yourself.
Oh,
Yeah. Because he jumped right in there with the second.
Did you say June 30th or June?
June 30th, 2022. I mean, who knows how things are gonna be.
Extend,
Mhm.
yeah,
It's a storage building, it's not like they're living in there.
right, I mean, you say occupancy permit, yeah.
It's not like there's
Say
bathrooms or there's,
storage.
it's just
Can-
stuff.
Can you
I
specify?
just bring this up because there's been issues for other things and it won't really matter for this building, but do you want to add, pending meeting health and safety requirements or
They may not be
something?
able to.
Well, it's just there have been issues with other people looking for temporary occupancy permits.
Wouldn't those things require plumbing and that sort of thing?
That's what I'm saying, I don't
This
think
doesn't
that's
Change the
require-
word occupancy permit to, use permit for storage use permit or something like that, just specify that it's not for personal occupancy.
Well, it's not built.
I know what an occupancy permit is technically, and but I think if we put it in plain English, that we're approving, storage, on-site storage,
You can say temporary occupancy for on-site storage.
yeah, there you go.
That takes care of it.
That specifies that we're not granting people the ability to move in.
Yeah, that covers, good. So that was Lynn, and you,
So motion by Lynn, second by Steve. Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? I'm abstaining. Oh, and so is Richard. So motion carries, 5 in favor, none opposed, 2 abstentions.
Steve's voting not you, okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Chris recused himself from that discussion.
Well, Chris, you've been kind of recused from when you came in until now. Shall you be joining the board at
Yeah,
this point?
sure, yeah.
Okay. So Chris is in and Steve's out.
Sorry, Steve.
Take your sprinkles and go all.
Or better yet, bring some next time, along with some samples. All right.
Glenn, you're gonna go into zoning?
Well, actually, we're gonna do minutes.
Okay.
I'm gonna try to do minutes. And if we don't get a response, then we're gonna go on to zoning.
Okay.
So we're looking at the.
November 16th.
Help me out.
November
November
16th.
16 minutes.
And I'll move that we accept the November 16th minutes as written.
Motion by Peter Coffin,
Okay.
second by Robin. Discussion, corrections, adjustments, bad grammar, nasty words, whatever.
Leave them in.
Oh, please, can I do that? If I can do that, someone needs to tell me.
Okay. All right, hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? It's unanimous. Thank you.
Perfect, now before
Okay.
you go to zoning?
Now we do zoning.
No, can I do one thing before?
Oh, I wasn't understanding you correctly.
Thank you. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Last Thursday, well, let me start over. There was a code enforcement action taken by the Board of Selectmen against a property on Shenandoah, how was it?
Shenandoah.
It's got an R in it.
It was SHENDOAR.
There's nothing after the N and the D,
Okay,
correct.
whatever word.
so it's Shenandoah or something.
Shenandoah, go ahead.
Could you just explain what the action was that was taken?
I got a call the night before that they were going, they being the police there because of an occupant of a camper trailer causing an issue, and they wanted me to know that it was being occupied. So the next day I went there with the police to check out the place because when I'd driven by earlier, there were Heritage Electrical was there doing work, there were people drywalling, there was a lot of stuff going on. And she said they were repairing some drywall
In the house or in
in a trailer house, not the camper, there's a trailer in them. They were installing a new electrical service, which they took beyond that a little bit, but the electrical inspector had checked it and was okay with it. The camper that was there, she claimed was being used for an office. And I told her she had to have planning board approval to do that. And they were getting ready to build a carport over it. You know, the leaks, I guess, and they were trying to protect it somewhat. I said, well, you have to have building permits and planning board approval to do that. And that's where we were. I told her to go in and talk to Glenn Monday, right? Or was it Thursday?
Not yesterday, Monday.
Last Monday.
But the Monday before that, yes.
And she did.
She did come in and talk to me. I gave her the site plan review application package, explained to her what was required. This is a property that's located in the rural residential zone. There is no site plan on this parcel because it's always been used just residential. So I told her that she would have to have a surveyed plan.
It's being used for business?
That's what she's claiming, that the,
Okay.
She has two web-based businesses and she stores material in the camper. and she gave me a lot of pictures that show lots of boxes and bins and whatnot in this camper trailer. So here's the crux of my issue. She has written a letter asking to not be subject to the requirement of the engineered plan. And
Does she live in the mobile?
she lives in the mobile home that's on the site.
So isn't this a home-based business?
It's not, it doesn't take place in the
No,
home.
because she
it
can't
takes place
occupy,
in a camp trailer.
she can't occupy the camper.
She has a house.
She has
On
a
the
trailer there.
And she doesn't occupy the trailer, and she.
No,
So
she
she occupies the trailer and then there's a camper beside it. And she's occupying the camper.
As a business.
She claims it's her office.
Yes.
And to occupy that more than 90 days, she has to have approval to occupy it as a business.
Well, she-
Wouldn't that be like occupying your garage or something as a business? As a home-based business?
Well, except you can't, there's an ordinance that says you can't occupy a camper more than 90 days.
Oh, okay.
And
If
there's
this was all going on
also
in
a
the
shed in the
home-
background that's lit up late at night with people in it, so I'm not
Oh,
sure somebody's
okay.
not in it too.
Yeah.
So I mean, if this was all taking place in the manufactured home that they live in, I don't think we have an issue. But with it being in the camper and being used as an office, it requires site plan review. We have no site plan for the site. So the request is they will do a site plan without an engineered plan.
And the second part of that, before you finish, is that if they're building a structure over this, they would need it anyway to prove where their
Right, that there are meeting
lot lines
setbacks
are,
from
that they're
any
meeting
wetlands or
setbacks.
boundary lines. So the request is for allowance to do the business without a prepared site plan. And I need direction from the board, and my counsel would be that we need to have one. But they have the right to ask not to have one and just do a site plan.
You said you showed your pictures of the camper being used for storage boxes. So did you suggest maybe that she run the business from her house and just
She
use that
did,
space as storage?
here, there's always a story, isn't there?
Yeah.
She did this business out of her home until her father got ill. Her father got ill, was living in Methuen, now he has to live with them. The space that she used to use in her manufactured home was for her business. Now that is for her father to live with them.
So if it were a home-based, or home occupation, the home occupation can take place in the house or in an accessory building.
Structure.
Yeah. But the mobile is not, or the trailer is not a structure.
It's not deemed as an accessory structure, it's not a big structure, it's a camp trailer.
Right,
No, it's not supposed to be utilized for more than X amount of.
right.
Right, it doesn't
So-
fall, it's not like a garage or a shed where you could store business materials based with a home-based business. A camper isn't the same kind of structure.
So it's the type of,
So in order
Can I run-
to get, basically, is there a way of making application, for example, if you wanted to put your in-laws in the camper or something like that, would there be a way of making application for using it more than 90 days?
No.
And I don't think that-
Well,
No, so that, therefore,
could the board of, I thought the board of
Would be-
selectmen could go do some series of temporary permits for that.
For 90 days.
90
Another
days.
90 days.
Once in a year.
Or once a year.
Yeah, that's what it says.
so what that would mean is that you're trying to get permission to use that trailer. Well, you can't use it to live in, to occupy. So then you're saying, well, use it as a business, and I would think the same rules would apply. Because one of the problems with doing a site plan review is that a mobile structure like the camper moved around, and, you know, it's not a permanent installation. Like
Well, except they've already poured sonotubes to put a carport over it without permits.
that's another issue. And
Well, but that means they're planning on keeping it in that location.
Right.
Okay, well, yeah, if this is gonna be a business, and I still don't know how you get around the occupancy of the trailer requirements, if that's not legal, I would think for a person,
Because if you're saying it's an
Wouldn't you have to
office,
go to the ZBA?
I would think that, yeah, you wouldn't, how would you get permission
The planning board can't approve it,
to
right?
use a trailer for a business, because it's,
can we delay this for a month? Until we can do a little more research and.
yeah, I would think, this is not a question of.
They're not going to, no, they're taking this action because they're being told to. So if the town is
Well,
asking for more time, then they're certainly not going to argue.
all right, then
But we need to stop.
I would make a motion, we deny the request to do this without a site plan, or a survey, engineer plan. There you go, that's what we wanted.
The alternative would be to do what, an expedited site plan review?
They can't do expedited.
Just
it's not-
Exactly,
There's no- yeah,
the
it's
criteria for
just a
that.
site, just a
So-
site
You'd
plan.
have to have a site plan
Without
to
a
do
engineer
an
plan.
expedited from.
Okay.
So you denied the request to waive
Yes.
the requirement for site plan?
Requirements of the,
That could, I don't know, that could perhaps make them not do anything, because they might not have the money to do that. I don't know.
But that gives them the 30 days to do whatever research they want to, and they can always tell them to ask again if it looks like there's different information.
Okay, good, thank you very much.
Well, wait a minute, we need to vote.
No.
There was a motion,
And there was no second.
and there was no
You're right.
second.
what was it say?
I'll second it.
Yeah, okay.
Richard motion, Glenn second, discussion.
Should reword the, restate the motion just
To
like.
deny the request to
Okay,
do this
yeah.
without an engineer plan.
Deny the request to waive the requirement for site plan review and the engineered plan.
Just want to make sure that was.
Everyone clear on the motion? I'm gonna call for the vote, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, abstentions, so that's unanimous.
How can we do zoning?
Sure. If Glenn says we can do it, are we good to go, Glenn?
Yes, are you mocking me? It sounds like you're mocking me.
All right. So,
Do you have new language for the board?
Glenn, do you have new stuff for us?
Just what we agreed to last week
Oh,
for the
Yeah.
multifamily.
okay, so if folks, if you happen to have your stuff from the previous meeting, it's this page here, Glenn, that's got the highlighted, words on it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Looks like this?
In fact, I think that's the only one we changed.
I think so. We dealt with everything else, didn't we?
Yeah. I think it's
Because
first
we're doing
one,
this
yeah.
tonight because Glenn brought this to us at the last meeting and it
Right.
hadn't been noticed.
Correct.
So,
Yeah. Took a sentence out and changed a word or something.
One moment, C,
well,
requirements for multifamily dwellings.
Yes.
and
Yes.
road.
Right.
yep, that's the one.
And then
Yes, so in number 4, we changed number 4 to say number of dwelling units. It will be a multifamily structure shall not have more than 24 dwelling units.
So multifamily structure, remove dwelling.
Correct. And delete the last,
I thought-
the second
I
sentence.
thought you said multifamily dwelling structure. You didn't remove dwelling, did you?
Multifamily structure. No, we did remove dwelling because it's a multifamily structure shall not have more than 24 dwelling units.
Okay.
And you're at 24, that's the number?
That's the number.
And then the next sentence came
And
out.
the next sentence in that number 4 came out, deleted. Under density on that first line, it just should say then 4, not the or 6 on that first line. Delete or 6.
You get it?
And then-
Delete or 6?
Yes.
So it's just 4?
Yes.
Okay.
And then there's just the other yellow section that says 4.
Have a density greater than 4, that remains.
That remains, yes.
Okay.
That became the proposal.
Okay. So, discussion on that? Is everyone comfortable with that?
I make a motion to move it forward to warrant.
Second.
I thought we were moving this forward to the December 7th.
Actually, we have to move it to a public hearing first.
Up to the public hearing.
Yes.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Lynn, second by
Lynn.
Richard, to move this adjusted language on the multifamily dwelling section of the ordinance to public hearing on
Oh,
January
it's
4th.
January 4th, right?
January 4.
Oh, geez.
We didn't talk last week about some of the numbers or lettering being wrong based on what was on the phone or online, and I couldn't find that. So would somebody pass that on to Susan?
I did already.
She did already.
I
I'm
did
not saying
already.
she did.
Oh, you
already.
did?
I sent it last night at midnight.
Oh, okay.
Along with about a half a dozen
Because I
other.
talked to her about it
Email.
last Wednesday, and we couldn't try to find it, so.
Yeah, no, I
okay.
sent it
Yeah.
to her when I
I'm
did
so
the
glad
minutes.
we're not doing the minutes of last week's meeting because we got so much in this afternoon. There was no way I could get through it and work.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Lynn made it?
Lynn and
Richard.
all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Peter coming back?
I think so.
He is gonna come back, I saw that.
All right, Steve, why don't you vote? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, all right, so we've got 7, oh, you missed it, Peter.
All right, let's hear the
We
discussion.
had to have Steve vote in your place.
I was the other spirit, I got it.
Yeah, okay. We're carrying the revised language on the multifamily stuff to a public hearing on January 4th.
All right.
All right. So motion carries unanimously.
We're changing the definition of structure
Structure.
in the aquifer protection zone.
Correct. Correct. To read the same way as it will now read in the
Was that another
commercial
proposal?
free zone.
And
Yeah,
what,
that
so
was
what
from
are you going
Chris,
to,
that was-
what are you going to say?
The next sheet.
It's just,
You only
what is
have
it
that
going
one
to
sheet.
say?
It's gonna say what we
Four
approved
different sheets.
for the,
Well, maybe.
For the definition of structure.
the definition of structure,
Right.
Commercial free zone.
in your zoning thing.
Yeah,
In
we're
the
making it
zoning thing?
consistent.
Yeah.
So, it's just,
So it should be the definition of structure in the aquifer protection overlay.
and we're not gonna list the
Sh- shall-
definition, we're
no,
just going to
sh-
refer
sh-
to.
Shall be the same as the approved definition of structure in,
Yeah.
In the preface, whatever it is,
Right, the preamble.
preamble.
So it's
Make a
gonna be
motion
the
with-
same language as the one, what zone was that in?
I
The
make
one
a
we
I think it's
just
just the
changed.
definitions
That's
of
okay, I got it,
zoning.
we just changed.
Make
Correct.
a motion, we move it forward to the public hearing on January 4th.
Second.
Motion by Lynn, second by Richard. Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Right.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Unanimous? Were there any others?
Yeah, there's
We
one
have
that came up
citizen
tonight.
petition.
No, you don't do that, you don't do anything with that until January 4th.
Oh, have they already been noticed?
I just noticed that we were gonna have a public hearing on
Okay.
petition warrant
I mean, the
article.
planning board's supposed to send them to public hearing, so, but if
Well-
we've already put them in, that's fine. Doesn't-
I haven't put anything specifically in, I just said that on January 4th, we're gonna be doing blah, 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 and hearing petition warrant articles.
Perfect, perfect.
We have some.
Two.
What are they?
One,
Roosters?
And, to allow
one for Mr. Durrell and
agricultural
on.
use in all zones, including single-family residential zone. Is what he says.
To what?
And to allow agriculture and farming in all zones, including single-family residential, and to remove the rooster thing.
And what about,
And the other one is something
And
to
the
do
other one
with
is
Woodland.
Dwarf
Those
and
are the
on
two.
New Boston Road.
Wow. No in your backyard.
So just a reminder, when we do those hearings for the citizen petitions, we're required to hold the hearing, and we actually have to vote to either support or not support it, and that goes on the ballot. We don't have the option to change any wording, nor does anybody have the option to change any wording. It goes forward as is.
And we do those on January 4th?
Yep. Do we have other things? Glenn?
Well, there was one you came up
Oh,
with tonight.
right. What was that?
Well, discussing GLA versus
That's it.
Yes.
effective.
Very
We
pretty.
can just put that in the accessory dwelling unit.
Well, that would, I would think you'd put it in all areas of the,
Oh, wait, we're doing, we've already sent those changes to,
correct. So it's too late.
no, it's not.
Oh, it's not?
No.
I mean, I don't know how y'all feel about it. I mean, I just know that that's sort of the standard. I could run back to the office and get my
Well,
real estate
And
textbook.
it's, at least in other towns that I'm familiar with, it's how they calculate it as well. It's on
See, I
basically
kind of thought this
conditions,
was the
conditions.
proportion of the buildings to keep them somewhat related.
Well, I think it is.
Well, it is.
But if you have a giant garage on the house and a wing or stuff that's not counted in that,
Oh.
Well, you,
But
well,
That's- We're not counting that on the
I
ADU
just,
either.
I think we need to do it one way or the other, obviously not, we don't know.
well, with effective, it counts, you know, as I said before, basements, porches, attics, crawl spaces, slabs, you know, anything that you've got. Everything that they can possibly tax within a house is the effective rate.
Well, I guess the good thing is if we did GLA, it would tend to make them a little smaller, so.
I mean, effective even count your front steps versus GLA is the gross living area, which in Florida is anything under air conditioning, and up here is anything under heat. And that's definition used for the multiple listing service. Although the problem with the multiple listing service and the reason that you sometimes see the effective number in there and not the GLA, which makes it really hard for us trying to do comparables, is because the way in which the data is uploaded from the town tax cards through Vision or whoever Kingston has, I can't remember.
Avatar.
The way Vision's okay, but the way Avatar uploads it, what gets uploaded is the effective, not the GLA. So what happens is when we go in to post or to put the data in on a listing, it says, do you want to put the public records in? And they put yes. And what comes in public records is sometimes your GLA, and if it's Avatar, the effective rate comes up, which is why they were confused, because they thought the GLA was different. You know, I mean, because they thought they were buying a house with more square footage than they were. Yeah.
I have always used the effective rate. Always.
Can I just ask a question about this? Because I realized that when we approved a recent ADU, one of the conditions that had to be on the plan was they had this small utility area. And if that utility area was added in to the square footage we were using, they didn't meet the requirements. So we made them specifically say that that area would never be heated, so it couldn't be part of the calculations.
Couldn't be part of the GLA.
Right,
Correct.
so we have made that determination on a recent approval that we didn't ding them for it and say, no, you can't have that. But what we did say to them is, you can't heat it, because if you heat it, that's then counted as part of your square footage. So apparently we have made that distinction when we made an approval. I don't know what any of you people are talking about,
We
but.
made the distinction on the accessory dwelling unit,
Correct.
Yeah, not on the.
What were we using to calculate
The
the
house.
No,
percentage?
and I'm not saying that, I'm just saying that we have made a determination in the past that an area heated does change the square footage
That's right,
of what
but
we're
Glenn's been
counting.
using the house as a whole, so.
The
a
house
proportion.
as the effective rate that was given on the
And
tax.
so now we're just saying we're gonna do it one way or the other, we just.
Now we're
No, I
saying
get
we
that,
want to use the
but
gross
when you determined how much the square footage of the ADU was gonna wind up being, they were told specifically, you can't heat this section.
That is
because
correct.
otherwise you go
Right.
over.
That's correct.
But we
but
were using
weren't-
the maximum calculation to begin with anyway, so even
Yeah,
if
we
we
weren't
had
using-
the, whatever, GL.
That similarity would have been if they were saying that their ADU was going to include their garage area on that ADU.
No,
And they specifically said that it wasn't.
I get everything that you're all saying, but I'm just saying that the final result was that we told them, make sure you don't heat this.
Correct.
Because then it is added into the total square footage of the ADU. As long as it's not heated, it's not added in. So we did already make a distinction between the effective and the.
You can have a
We made a
house
distinction,
with-
but we're using two different figures on it.
So my proposal,
Doesn't matter.
I think what we want to say is, in section 206-4, AU requirements, paragraph E, to change the second line to read as follows. Ready?
Window.
The maximum size of the ADU shall not exceed 1/3 of the size of the of the gross living area of the primary single-family dwelling.
Perfect.
And then for the,
What'd you say of the primary unit?
of the primary single-family dwelling, that's the language that we have present.
Thank you.
Do we also then need to add a definition for gross living area?
We should.
Just so there's no
Yep.
misunderstanding about what that is?
Can I just understand,
Or we can just say the gross living area as found on in town tax records.
Well, do you put the gross living area in the
Yes, it's
definitions?
right in the tax card.
Oh, yeah, it's on the tax card, yeah.
It's right in the tax card. Because I've ignored it every time and used the effective. But it's there.
so we're functionally saying we want your ADU to be smaller
Mm-hmm.
than we've been
Well,
moving up to
and
this
that is the idea, that is the,
That's the result.
That's the result.
The gross living area, every time I've looked at it, is a smaller number than the effective square footage.
Despite the fact that you're taxed on the effective.
Mm-hmm.
right. Now
I love
that,
that.
Yeah,
I was gonna say it.
I'm getting from the way you're
You do
you're
love it, you
looking
don't
at it.
love it.
I don't.
Yes.
I agree with you.
think
I mean, I'm just saying
if
use
you're
one or the
taxed
other,
on the
but determine.
effective, that should be what the calculation
But
is.
then, in
based
that
on.
case, you would have to count all, in this case, for example, they weren't counting the garage that was attached to the ADU, because that's really not part of the ADU. However, you would have to, if you were to count the garage of the house as, part of the effective
Isn't
living
the
area.
taxes different for, on these kind of things?
Yeah,
Yeah, the different
The
tax rates.
taxes, the tax rate for a shed, for example, isn't the same
Mhm.
as your house.
That's correct.
I think what he said covers it.
But
If
it's,
we're
but,
gonna use the
like the
GLA.
effective rate, like anything that's attached to the house and the porch, you're not getting less on the porch.
Yes,
Right.
you are.
Like, I think if we were gonna, I would feel more comfortable with be the effective rate of the primary dwelling, because obviously if there are different tax rates for garages and stuff like that, but yeah, it kind of stinks that you're getting, you know,
Because like if you have a farmer's porch in the front,
yeah,
getting taxed far differently than you are in the actual house itself.
yeah.
But
But you're
to
still being
Ellen's
taxed.
point,
But you're still
it's
being
gonna
taxed.
be the effective square footage of the primary dwelling, then it should be the effective square footage of the accessory dwelling.
Correct.
yeah, both should be on the same standard.
Correct.
Correct.
Whichever one it is.
So I'm in agreement with that, I just think it should be the higher, the effective.
I do not think that a accessory dwelling unit, that you should be able to count garage as part of the square footage, because
That
it's
you
not
shouldn't
living.
have to count a garage.
I'm sorry?
That you shouldn't have to count a garage.
Is that like the ADU small?
No.
But if
if-
you count the garages on the house, then you have to count it on the ADU.
You know, I just think that that's not really living area, and if that's what you're trying to do, I have no problem with the effective area, like a screened-in porch. I think a screened-in porch is living area, may not be year-round, but I don't think a garage is a living area, and I don't think somebody should be able to get a very large ADU
But-
because someone has a garage.
Because some house has a 4-car garage or a 5-car
The reason
garage, and
I
they get a
use
big
the
one.
effective
That was gonna be my point, if we're comparing GLA to GLA, we're fine, because that way if it truly is a barn-looking thing, they may have a 4-bay tractor thing or something added to it. You know, so if we're counting
The reason I used the effective was because it was the larger number, and our definition said that it shall not exceed 1/3 the size of the primary single-family dwelling. So I just included the most all-encompassing definition of the size of the unit.
Yeah.
If that's not right, I'm absolutely comfortable with doing it this way.
I have absolutely no problem with the basement and attic, all parts of the actual
Well, attics aren't
single-family.
needed.
I'm sorry, what?
Attics aren't needed.
Some.
And basements usually aren't needed,
Right, so unless they're finished,
unless they're
and then they
finished.
become part of the
And then it
GLA.
would be the GLA, it wouldn't be the effective.
But with the, like with an attic space, if you've got a colonial house, you know, that stands in one way and you're using, you know, 3 floors or 4 floors, or if you've got the basement all the way up, some houses I've sold some with 4 floors, because the basement is open in the back, and they have the 3rd floor finished. So you take all of that square footage, and now you've got a huge ADU that might be next to it, because, you know, you've suddenly got 5,000 square feet, and now you've got a, you know,
So is gross living area just going to be considered either heated or air conditioned?
Call it conditioned space.
For the definition, you mean?
So that everybody knows what everyone's talking about.
Well,
I think we should have a definition in there.
the only way they're going to know from this perspective is if we somehow tie the phrase to the Kingston tax card. Because that's where they're going to get that number.
Yeah.
And does the Kingston tax card include anything that's heated as part of gross living area?
yeah.
I haven't looked at that, so that's why I'm asking.
Well, Ellen,
Don't look at my
do you know
house.
what your map and lot
Yes,
is?
I do, and I don't want anyone looking at my house, thank you very much.
Lynn, you can look yours up.
Allison's right to your house.
No.
Do we know what the languages in other towns
Yeah.
was?
Glenn is saying that
The
in
ones
his
that-
communities, they use
The ones that I
gross
work with
square, gross living.
use, they don't call it that, but they basically call it the conditioned space with the either heated or air conditioned space as the number that the square footage that they use.
They put a wood stove in the garage.
Okay. So I'll use my house. Hold on, where are we at? So like,
That's what I do.
the effective rate gives a garage, my garage is 1,056 square feet, and the effective on that is 264 square feet, because it's taxed for less, so the effective is how much less you're taxed for that piece of thing that's there.
So it's still included in the total calculation?
The effective,
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
okay.
So like,
but it wouldn't be in the,
In the GL.
right.
right, so my basement has 540 square feet, because I have a garage under, and that's got effective rate of 81. So it really isn't as proportional.
But it doesn't show the GLA on the tax card, right?
Yeah, it sure does.
It does.
Okay.
Right here. So
Well,
you-
then
But
so
I
we've
mean,
got-
by that,
And
it's
that
showing
number's
that
all
using the
small.
effective rate isn't gonna allow these enormous ADUs, because
But-
the effective rate is like really
A
scaled
percentage.
down.
Right, so what this is showing is the whole area of my house, every little bit of it,
Yeah,
is 4,888 square feet. This is just public record.
yeah.
The effective is 2620.
And
And-
what's the GLA?
The GLA is 2208.
So the 2208 is what you'd use. That's fine.
Well, so here's why it's not apples to apples though, because the effective rate includes a percentage of space, not the total space,
Right.
such as garages, attics, basements.
Right, it just a
If
little
we're
bit.
looking at a plan we're not using that calculation on the garages or the porches or the shed,
Exactly.
Totally, yeah.
so it's not the same. So we could use the effective and have a separate standard for plans that we're reviewing.
Well, using the effective, but the problem is you're not using the whole space.
Right.
If you were to use the whole space, it'd be 4888.
So it's still a reduction from,
From the gross.
yeah.
Oh, it's always considerable from the gross.
But like, for
Because
example,
like their gross was 5,200.
Right, yeah.
but in the effective, I've got a cathedral ceiling in one of my rooms. So the size of the cathedral ceiling is 288 and the effective is 29. I mean, that has nothing to do with gross living area.
No.
So, when you get to stuff like that are in here, it has nothing to
It's
do
more
with
like
it.
tax and fees.
So I think we,
It's-
I don't know, I think we
Stop
should
getting-
do features.
Stop getting taxed for random stuff.
Yeah, you're getting taxed for features in the house.
So you're paying for that ability to have something larger.
Yeah, so I'm just saying.
So if the town wants to have smaller ADUs, they should reduce the obnoxious things they tax people on.
Well, that's an issue that you can talk with the assessors.
Yeah.
But so could we say that it's based on the effective square footage of the primary dwelling, but we will be looking at the gross living area of the proposed accessory dwelling?
I think you've got to chuck apples to apples.
Yeah,
But we're not
you
gonna
can't-
do
you
those
can't-
calculations.
I don't think we're gonna solve it tonight.
Well, no, but if
I think we just need to make the decision tonight, and maybe only one person's going to not be happy.
We all have a vote here.
Exactly, exactly.
the problem that you're going to start to get, if you do the GLA, that seems to be a fixed number. If you do the other, then you're going to have to be looking at property cards every time someone comes in to say, oh, this is a cathedral ceiling, that doesn't count. This is this, that doesn't count. And it's going to be less even-handed, if you will, than if you just pick the one number that the town has determined is the gross living area of the structure.
And you're also putting it into the hands of the assessors to determine those numbers, which all
means-
assessors are not created equal. we
That's
have found.
true, but the other thing that it does is if you've got a home where you've got undeclared living space, and now you want to do you better start declaring your living space. You finished the attic, you finished the basement, you never reported it, you never got permits.
That doesn't happen.
I still say if we go GLA for GLA, we're fine.
And that's what,
Second.
Well, that's what the proposed language is right now.
Huh?
That's what the
Yeah.
proposed language is right now,
Which is what you read.
Yeah.
is to use the GLA.
it just seems like there's a national definition of GLA, and it doesn't vary from town to town or assessor to assessor.
Yeah.
So, was a motion,
Yeah.
Lynn? And
Richard.
where was, you did the second?
I did first, I thought.
You did.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
You did the motion?
And to add those
You
four
did it a long
sentences,
time ago.
those 4 words that you said, and the definition.
I'm going to change the second line to read, the maximum size of the ADU shall not exceed 1/3 of the size of the GLA of the primary single-family dwelling. And someplace we're putting GLA is defined in the town's tax card.
Well, I think you need to say gross living area and
Yeah,
GLA.
So I
yeah,
have it
yeah.
down below gross living area.
Yeah.
Okay,
And that's
right.
of the accessory dwelling unit as well?
Yes.
Yes.
May have just lost your microphone.
This is
Oh, your laptop.
this is just,
All right, so,
So this is what we have so far. I don't know where I'm adding in the size of the GLA.
Well, we can just say the GLA
That's-
as found on the Kingston tax
Yeah,
card.
that's
Yeah,
what I
maybe.
have my arrows going to,
Yeah,
but I
that's-
needed the board to say
That,
that.
that's the only place we want them looking for it.
right. Is that what you intended?
Yes.
And who seconded it? Did someone?
I do.
You
Lynn.
made it, and he seconded it, right?
No,
No.
He actually
Richard
made
said
it,
he made the
he
motion.
actually made it at the beginning of the
he
discussion.
made it a long time ago.
Yeah.
Did someone second it?
I'll second
I
it.
was gonna say.
Okay.
I hate to ask for further discussion, but we have to Yeah, I have to say that, so. All right, hearing none, call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 You better vote. Count 'em.
1, 2, 3.
Hands raised for aye, for in favor. What do we get?
4 in favor.
You have 4.
Those opposed? 3. And no room for abstentions. That covers
I
it.
vote.
The motion carries by a slim margin, 4 to 3.
So the motion is to move the proposed language to public hearing?
Oh, well, that could be in
That
down.
should be the
That
next.
should be the next motion.
Oh, okay, so what's the first motion? To adopt the proposed language?
No, yes,
To adopt the language.
for that to be the language.
But, yeah, you're saying that's the language then,
To
We-
adopt the
We
proposed
could have
language?
included and move it
and
to
move it to public hearing.
To
And
public
now
hearing.
make a motion that we move it to whatever.
public hearing
on
Public
January
hearing.
2nd.
on
January 4th.
January 4th.
Okay, can I just clarify something? Your motion is to adopt the proposed language. You can't do that.
Yeah, I was gonna.
You can
I
adopt the
thought that was a
proposed-
motion to move it to warrant.
Not the warrant, but the hearing.
We were,
To the public hearing, the public
voting to establish what the proposal was gonna be.
Okay, so you're making a motion to establish the proposed language, not
Yeah.
adopt it.
Right. Yes.
The proposed amended language. So you're making a motion to establish the proposed amended language. Does everyone think that's right? Okay,
Yeah.
so that's done. Okay,
Now
now you're gonna
motion
make
to
a
move it
motion.
to public hearing, January 4th.
It fails because there's no second.
Motion by Richard,
Second.
second by Lynn. Discussion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? 1. Abstention. Peter,
Aye.
did you vote? You're not, okay. So 6,
It's 6 to 0 to 1?
6, 0.
6-1.
No, 6, 1, 0. It was a no vote,
It's
right?
just 6 to 1.
Chris?
Right.
Correct.
So 6 in favor, 1 opposed, no abstention.
Is that it? I got one. Actually, mine's more of a question.
That was all we needed to do for warrant
think so.
stuff, right? Okay.
The ZBA ran into an issue with the summit hearing that was appealed due to the lack that an easement holder was not noticed. Am I saying all that right?
Yeah,
So,
so far.
my question is, can we change our abutter notices to make it the responsibility of the abutter to contact any easement holders of their property?
Make me butter?
You mean the applicant?
No,
No.
the abutter.
You mean?
So in other words, if I
hold-
send you an abutter notice that I'm doing something, you're my neighbor, that you have to contact anybody that holds an easement on your property.
The way they're interpreting,
Because,
the way,
let me just finish, because the issue is, to find those easement holders, you have to go way into the property card or the deed even.
And sometimes beyond that.
oh,
and beyond
you
that,
do a title
and-
search at the registry.
Yeah.
And so, who are we gonna put that responsibility on, is what's bothering me, because what's probably gonna happen is it's gonna go downstairs and say, they've gotta do the abutter notice and check all of this.
Doesn't it have to be the applicant?
It has to be the applicant.
Yeah.
But is there an
I
expectation
mean,
that
that
an
means the
applicant has to do a
applicant
title
has to
search on
every
every
abutter?
abutter?
I have never, as the professional planner for now 4 towns, I have never, ever read that statute to say that on the butter list, you had to check and see if there were conservation easements on the abutting property.
Or any easement.
It was just on the subject property. But this appeal, their counsel is saying, no, that statute means when you develop an abutters list, if there's a conservation easement or a preservation easement on any of the abutting parcels, you have to notify them.
Well, that would mean any easement then, not just conservation.
Any-
Well, no, the statute says conservation or preservation.
Okay.
There's a third one, they're all basically the same.
Huh.
But the statute does say it.
And by the way, in this particular case, the abutter would have been the town of Kingston.
Well, one of them, yeah.
So you'd be responsible for, and in order to, I mean, one of the ways to start eliminating some of that is, you can't do it for everybody, but at least the town of Kingston, if they hold a conservation easement, they can put that on the property card.
Yeah.
Well,
So at least the town no longer is stepping in anything.
I'm not gonna say that this happened in this instance, but there could be an instance where a person hides the fact that there's an easement holder just so they've got that in their back pocket. If it gets approved, they could bring it out and say, you didn't notify my easement holder.
I agree.
Well,
We
most-
require so many things to be recorded at the registry when it comes to properties.
Mhm.
Can't that be required to be put on the tax card? You have an easement?
It's on other tax cards in a lot of towns.
So
Yeah, I see no reason why it couldn't be. I think that would be, especially if it comes out that it's determined that that is a valid argument, because I agree, oh my God, it will take months to determine that information. But if every time you get a deed, it's on the paperwork somehow, you know, it's on the tax card, then you have it.
See, my argument for that is the majority of people doing a butter list go to the tax map, pull out the tax map, and they say this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one.
And then go to the
And then they
tax
look it up and get the address and they send it. And
Exactly.
done. Now we're saying that they at least have to go to the tax card, which that means the person, well, if
you're
we end
looking
up,
at the address,
if we end up
you're pulling
doing
up the tax
digital,
card.
it'll make it easier, but
Tax card's easy enough to do, but
And
having to
exactly.
read everybody's deed
No, that's crazy.
and then search back to see if anybody ever put an easement on the deed is ridiculous.
Yeah,
well,
that's
how do we
crazy.
do it until it's put on all the tax cards?
We're gonna find that out at the hearing.
Well, don't you have a
Doesn't
list of
legally
all the conservation here easements anyway?
You do.
You do.
Well, they have books of them, but they don't, you have 2 volumes of books downstairs that list all of the easements that the town's involved in.
Correct.
Conservation easements, but that doesn't have anything to do with Mr. Cheney having the Society for the Protection of the Hampshire Forests having an easement on his property.
So
And it's generally not deeded, so it's not on the deed either.
But
So how the hell do you know?
Focus knows most of the properties that have those easements because,
So does that mean now you have to contact Focus?
no,
too?
no, no,
So-
I'm saying
And
that's
that's
how the town
Focus
can
knows
find
most of
out.
them. Focus doesn't even know all of them.
But I'm just saying, Focus has them because they've got trails and everything through those
Yeah, but keep
properties.
it
So at least that the town would know that those properties have easements. Some of the ones that are owned by Selton, that sort of thing, you don't have to worry
Wouldn't it be much
about.
easier just for the town, when somebody comes and you're doing a butter notice,
Yeah.
basically whoever's doing the letter to the abutter says, this is your notification, and it's your responsibility, if you have any easements on that property, you're to notify that easement holder.
That's what I started out
Period.
saying.
Yeah, that's it.
I think that's the best way.
That's what
the
I
easiest
said in
way
the
to do it.
beginning.
Just the simplest.
I think that's the
easement.
best.
Why can't that be part of the letter that they send?
You
It's-
have to check the RSA's to make sure the town can legally do that.
And
Okay.
If the town can, great.
Well, that comes down to whether that's our interpretation of the RSA.
Yeah.
If
But
it-
I never before thought the interpretation
I-
could possibly be that they mean conservation easements
I
on the
think that
abutting
we're out of
lots.
line talking about this. This is going to the ZBA.
I'm not even talking about that case, I'm talking
Okay.
about in general.
But
Okay.
I'm
So
just
let me ask, if we determine that we can add that writing, that to an abutter list letter, we don't need any action to do that, right? We just have to vote it in and then add it to the letter.
But does that
Correct.
solve your problem?
Correct, although
Because,
I think we should ask our counsel.
yeah.
Yeah, but I mean,
Because we're
we don't
basing-
need it in a regulation or an ordinance.
No?
Okay, so then we don't need to deal
We're
with
doing
it
to
tonight.
comply with the regulation, the statute that already exists.
And my feeling is, okay, so let's say there's an easement on my property, you tell me it's my responsibility to notify somebody, but you've given it to me 2 weeks ahead, and I have to notify them within 2 weeks, there's not that time period to notify them. And on top of that, what if I don't? Now,
What are
that
you gonna
person
do?
can still sue.
Yep.
If that's the proper interpretation of the law.
All right, I'll talk to Summer.
That's one thing to remember, lawyers just give opinions.
No,
As they say, it doesn't mean it's right or it's fact.
no,
But no, you can actually
we've met several times.
find case law usually.
Well, and if there isn't case law yet,
Yeah, that's the problem.
you don't want to be the one named in it.
Yeah.
Which we're about to be,
Again?
well, I'm just saying based on this discussion.
Well, can't, I mean, if that butter wasn't noticed, can't the hearing be redone?
Well, that's
The
what
hearing
they're,
is being.
That's what they're doing.
I think it's
January.
that if, you know, outside of our hypotheticals talking about the future, it'll probably have to be decided on by the courts.
Yeah.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right.
Ooh, what?
Motion and a
4 minutes to
second to
spare.
adjourn at 10:25. All in favor? All
All
right. Go in peace. Have a great Christmas.
He only hasn't lived in
Just
a year.
now.
See you in January.